episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hansen, joined by Andrew Reiner.
Why, hello, Ben.
The champion is here. We have Kyle Hilliard.
Am I also champion?
Yeah, welcome to the show. Serial Vasquez.
My champion status?
The old Big V himself. We got a lot of great games to talk about. This episode, we're talking about Injustice 2. We all like Superman. We all like Batman. What if they punch each other endlessly?
Well, everybody likes Batman.
That's true. We're talking a little bit about Farpoint on VR. Are you up for that? PSVR, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, great. The Surge, which is a Dark Souls-like game, except sci-fi. Reiner's going to give us the lay of the land there. Kyle, you went to the big Nintendo in the Sky recently, and you played a bunch of new Switch games, upcoming 3DS, 2DS games.
One new Switch game and then a bunch of 3DS games.
Wait, they have an Air Fortress now?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Switch the music in that level is very good.
That's what Koji Kondo is doing, just like composing lobby music for the new Nintendo facilities.
Yeah.
After all that, we have some great community emails. Then back half of the show, we have Frank Cifaldi to talk about video game history preservation. It sounds like a dry topic, but if you're passionate about history, video game history, I think there's a lot to sink your teeth into. He talks about history of Earthbound's marketing specifically. He talks about what he's doing at Game Informer, why preserving this stuff that you don't think is important is actually important. So it's a long, good chat, and I hope you'll enjoy that. But for now, Injustice 2, Reiner.
Yeah, let's get to it.
All right. Injustice 1 came out a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. It seems like NetherRealm, Mr. and Mrs. Mortal Kombat, they've been dancing with this DC license for so long. They initially had those two franchises up against each other in a brutal smackdown that everyone was disappointed by. And Injustice 1...
Not everyone.
No, but everyone was upset that there wasn't more blood.
Right.
That was the weird thing. So Injustice 1 seemed like people liked.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's an Injustice 2.
Yes, and you should like this one as well. It is very good, and the one thing I said about Injustice that really kind of set it apart from other fighters is kind of this duality that you see like in a lot of superheroes. Clark Kent, Superman, Bruce Wayne, Batman. This game was a fighting game, first and foremost, but it also succeeded as a story game. And what I mean by that is you don't have to have a great appreciation of fighting games to like this story. Like, it was a good superhero story. It was dark, it was different. They took the DC universe, kind of tipped it upside down, made Superman the villain. It begins with the Joker nuking Metropolis, which is terrible, and Superman's like, snaps, and he's like, that's it, and he rips out the Joker's heart. That's how that game began.
And then this one tries to keep the ball rolling.
That one, yeah, well, after 5 years of comic books, which are very popular, by the way, the Injustice comics are very good. Again, it's its own continuity that lives outside of DC's other comics. But that kept that kind of ball rolling into Injustice 2, but it's not as dark. You're not having that moment of, oh my god, what's going to happen? What craziness? Is Batman going to be the bad guy now or whatever? It's very much every hero fights every hero, every villain fights every villain type of story, but it still succeeds because it is lovingly made. They put tons of effort into making each sequence really something that comic fans can really get behind, both in terms of action and fan service, and just making the characters as dynamic as possible. So it's more of your just kind of epic fight than like a new kind of take on the lore. But again, I think it succeeds in just its presentation and how it's executed.
Yeah, I feel like since Mortal Kombat 9, the constant refrain is like, man, I don't know, they understand how to do story modes in fighting games. And like, we've done a lot of video covering Injustice 2 at this point, but those like cutscenes are really, really well done.
Yeah, right. And they go on for like 2 to 3 minutes. Like,
take a back seat, Mr. Kojima. Yeah, NeoGaf is really obsessed with the facial capture, and of course you see the comments of like, look alive, BioWare. Why did Mass Effect Andromeda look like? Well, it's like a 3-minute cutscene versus an 80-hour game. But alright, sure.
Yeah, it's one of those games where they get really close on the characters, like Harley Quinn, and when you watch her like yell, you're like looking at her lips, like, wow, that looks realistic. You know, like they put a lot of effort into making each character look great, and then it seamlessly transitions to fighting.
Yeah,
which is amazing. Obviously, the characters will kind of line up like side by side, and like getting ready to fight. But then it's just the HUD appears and you're at it. It's very cool in that capacity.
It seems pretty silly from the stuff I've seen so far. It is just how can we quickly shoehorn in these cameos? We'll have Reverse Flash pop in for a second, and then he's just going to run off afterwards. Like, all right, bye, that was my turn.
Flash takes a bullet to the leg, and he's like, I can't run anymore. And then like one scene will happen. It's like, I'm ready to go, and he'll just immediately start running again.
Yeah. So the game begins this time with Brainiac attacking Krypton, destroying Krypton. Superman, as a baby, is sent off to Earth. You all know the story. Kara, Supergirl, is sent off to Earth.
Help me out, stop. So I thought I knew DC lore a little bit. Brainiac destroyed Krypton?
Well, that's what they're saying happened here.
Okay, that's not like established DC.
No, I mean, there's many reasons. 52 Earths or Infinite Earths, whatever, Infinite Universes, they have different takes on it, but this is what NetherRealm came up with.
Okay.
Is that Brainiac, you guys all know him, flies around in a big skull with tentacles on it.
Did he name himself Brainiac?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, cool. No, he has a different name. I think he might have got the name Brainiac from someone.
I am Brainiac.
Is that true?
So, yes.
That's such a stupid.
Okay, sorry. But anyway, his big plot is he thirsts for knowledge. He hungers for knowledge. So everywhere he goes, he wants to consume as much of a culture and then destroy it because he wants that knowledge to be rare. He wants to be the only one that contains it.
Like the aliens in Crystal Skull, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So he'll go to Earth and he wants Supergirl. She's the last, Supergirl, Superman, the last people from Krypton. He wants them. He wants, the people of Earth, the most powerful people on Earth, and then he wants to destroy the planet. So all the heroes, villains kind of band together. But Brainiac can also take control of your mind and turn you against your own people. So you end up, again, having everyone fighting everyone. And it's fun in that capacity. And you're totally right. It's just like 1 second, two people will be talking, all of a sudden they're fighting each other.
I will say that, one thing I was pleasantly surprised by is that they don't sort of throw out the idea of Superman being the bad guy completely. This is one of those stories where, there's two separate sides, and then they team up together to take on, a greater force. But they never sort of completely say, all right, Superman's totally cool now, everything's fine. They make sure that is a thread throughout the entire story.
Okay, that's nice. They don't completely rip that off. So it's not doing anything crazy novel as far as DC goes. It's a fun little romp through all this stuff.
Yeah, some of the minor moments, I really like the interaction between Black Canary and Green Arrow. Just they're in a relationship. They're both superpowered, but they sort of have these minor quibbles and stuff. And their interactions with Harley, who's a good guy. They have some nice writing and dialogue that make the characters stand out.
I have a really dumb question. Why is Harley always associated with hyenas? Every attack she has is 14 hyenas running out of the bushes.
I'm not super up on the DC stuff, but yeah, that seems to be the case. I remember because they leaked the image of Harley as, here's a picture of a hyena, and it was like, oh, it's gotta be Harley. I was like, sure, I guess.
What is this, Reiner?
She had hyenas at one point, and they just... I mean, it's like Joker with the gun. He's used it once or twice in the comic, but it's okay, it's iconic.
Or everybody knows Batman loves giant pennies. I mean, that's just natural.
T-Rexes.
To your point about the fake gun, I love that Joker has an attack where he fires the gun, it's fake, and then that thing fires out and is the real attack.
In this one, I could have sworn that was in the last one. Was it? I feel like they played off the hatred.
They do it all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's one part of it. And one thing I'll say is, even if you hate fighting games, you struggle at them, if you set this game to super easy, I've played 5 matches on that, you should be able to beat this game and enjoy that story. The fighting game element, what the core of this game is very good this time. And it's better than it was before. It's very similar, but just little tweaks to what they had before make it so much more dynamic, faster, and just the wealth of strategy that's there now really kind of ups the defensive and offensive games.
Yeah, as someone who isn't that big of a DC fan, I do appreciate this game in terms of this is a pretty well done fighting game in that there's a nice combination of very flashy moves and just if you know what you're doing, you can combo people forever. But everyone has enough defensive options to where they're not. It's not like older Marvel vs. Capcom games where you're stuck in a combo for however long and there's nothing you can do. You can pop out of combos in various ways. There's like Reiner said, there's a lot of really cool defensive options, and I think if you just want to enjoy this as a video game in the sense that this is a game with content in it, you can play the game single player for a pretty long while without sort of having to hop online and get destroyed because they have a thing called the multiverse, which is just it's an evolution of the Starlass, which they did in Injustice 1. And so what you do is after you beat story mode, you should probably play story mode first, and then you go into the multiverse, and there's all these different parallel universes that are popping up and disappearing on different timers. One of them will be a week, one of them will be a day, one of them will be 2 hours. And you go in there, and they'll say, here's several missions where you fight alternate world versions of, Batman and, Superman or whatever, and they'll have rewards tied to it, here's some nice, Batman gear if you do this very difficult mission, and here's, a bunch of loot boxes and stuff.
But back to the fighting real quick, and then we'll move on to the loot, because that's the third element of this game that's really makes it kind of click and stand out apart from the other game. The fighting, they just sped up the general speed of movement. That goes a long way to really kind of reducing that kind of laborious battle of distancing and footwork where you're just trying to line yourself up at certain points. Now it's a lot faster. You can't read that as much on the defensive end.
You have a super long dash that if you use a meter, you can basically go across the entire screen in like almost an instant if you're willing to use the meter for it.
But then evasive rolls, stuff like that. But then I think they did a really good job of reinventing each character over Injustice 1. Like, a lot of times you go into a fighting game and it's like, oh, I know Ken's moves.
Right.
I know Ryu's moves. This game, it's like, you kind of have some of those similar ones, but then they've added enough new elements. I think that's something NetherRealm doesn't get enough credit for, even in all the Mortal Kombat games, is just making each character feel new again. And they did that in a great way in this one. Like, I loved what they did with Batman this time around. Superman, not so much. I couldn't really get a feel for him, but most of the characters I thought were really well done. And some oddities too, that it's a pretty deep reach in some regards for the DC universe.
I like a lot of the more obscure characters. Like I've been playing Black Canary, but just the idea of having Swamp Thing in the game is something that's I think is really cool for a lot of more obscure.
Dr. Fate.
Who is Atrocitus and why does he have a cat?
He is a Red Lantern.
Okay.
And so there are many lanterns in the universe. Obviously everybody knows the Green Lantern, but there's the yellow, blue, they're all over the place. The whole spectrum of the rainbow, right? Even beyond the rainbow.
Atrocitus has my favorite line. In this game, that you have a thing where you clash with an enemy, and sort of you'll bet sort of different parts of your meter, and the winner gets to deal damage or heal up. And my favorite interaction is between Atrocitus and Batman, where the whole Atrocitus' whole thing is that he's super angry and wants everyone else to be angry. So he tells Batman, "Your rage fuels you." And then Batman's witty counter is, "It has its uses," and then they just fight or whatever, and it just like, you guys kind of agree on this. I don't know what the problem is. Put down your arms, man.
Yeah, the Red Lantern is rage, by the way. Yeah. So
wait, so what does the Green Lantern symbolize then?
Yellow is fear. Green is that's the main one.
What does that mean? Chlorophyll?
That's right.
Oh, when you become a lantern, you're then consumed by this emotion?
Yeah, basically that's what drives you. It chooses you because you kind of harness that ability. So someone that's really angry the ring will go find them, right, and choose them. Like the cat must have been pissed off and ended up getting a ring.
Wait, so the cat's a separate lantern?
Yeah, the cat's a separate lantern, and it's just like kind of a summon being.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that. Like Poison Ivy, her special ability is she'll summon like a plant that basically looks like a PD Piranha from Mario, and it'll just spit acid at you until you hit Ivy. And then Swamp Thing has like a number of attacks where he'll reel you in with like trees, and then he'll bounce you to another Swamp Thing that pops up on the other side of the screen and just starts attacking you. Like, there's a lot of really like clever and flashy stuff in this game.
We did a video. You can check it out on the site where we just have all the finishing moves. Is that what they're called?
The super moves.
Super moves. Yeah. There we go. The flashiest moves, basically the equivalent of like
they take off 50% of your health. So that's usually like, I don't know what percentage, 30% of the time a match ends that way. Maybe. Something like that, right?
Yeah, we ranked them all in this video. And it is funny, at a certain point, after seeing so many of these so many times, just realizing it's just jokes. Like, it's just like they're designing a punchline. And the more twists they can have along the way of like, oh, I didn't see that shark coming from Aquaman. All right, that one's better than the other one. It's just funny when you boil down that entire essence. Like, well, of course, a fighting game needs punchlines and its moves. There we go.
Some of them are a lot crazier than others. Like, Catwoman's is she grabs you with the weapon, like basically just drives you down the road and then like throws a motorcycle and it explodes. But like Batman feels somewhat sane. I'm not sure what you would do with a super for Batman. Like he sort of.
Wait, are you about to call Batman's lame?
Batman super?
Yeah.
I mean, considering the amount of the idea that most of those heroes would survive that versus someone like Supergirl grabbing you and throwing you around the sun and then lasering you back onto Earth, like in terms of here's canonically how much damage this would do, a lot of them are very crazy compared to others.
Like, Bane just punches you hard.
Yeah.
To be fair, for Batman, he puts you in a balloon, it shoots you up into the sky, then the Batwing comes, recreates the best shot from 1989 Batman where it goes as a silhouette against the moon, then he cuts it, the balloon, the person falls back to Earth, and then he just unloads every missile and bullet he has.
Which would be cool if it wasn't being done to a superhero. You know what I'm saying?
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that it's hard to come up with an incredibly powerful superhero.
I agree. You should have like an oil-soaked rag and just put it behind Green Lantern's mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah, Batman style.
So he says. Yeah. He doesn't. But yeah, that's a pretty good look at like what the fighting game offers, and the production values I think are just as strong as in the story sequences. Like we're talking about, these super moves look fantastic. The environment's amazing. You can now block environmental attacks, by the way, which is another huge addition, where people could kind of spam that before, just grab everything and throw them at people.
Oh, God.
But the third component is collecting. like collectible gear that you're getting, like Serial hinted at here. There's loot boxes that you unlock, and you're getting the weirdest thing. Like I opened my first one, it was like I got Aquaman's head, Blue Beetle's arms, and Catwoman's legs, and I was like, what am I doing? And it turns out you're getting different pieces of costumes for them that have different stat bumps on them, different attributes.
Yeah.
You know, for like strength, defense, abilities, stuff like that. That can really make your character not only look different, but and significantly different. Like we're talking color swaps. I had a Green Lantern that looked like Ion. That's a deep cut for DC Comics fans. But it also enhances your performance and gives you new moves sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, really? So you can get like you can assign 2 new moves at any given time, abilities.
And some of them take up 2 slots too. Like
that's right.
Yeah. It's like the Mii's in Smash 4.
Yeah.
Really, it's about that here. No, does it feel addicting? It seems like the entire point of loot is just to
you get so much loot of it. It almost feels like too much because you just get so many things that you're just okay. It doesn't give me plus stats or whatever. So like none of the numbers are green, so no real point to them. But some of the rare gear looks really cool and offers some really nice like special. There's set bonuses for some of that stuff too, so it's all thematic. And one of them I saw for Brainiac was that if he has all 3 pieces of this one set, whenever you're near him, he'll just drain your meter. It's very slowly, but it's this game altering stuff that is super crazy. But if you don't want to do that, you can just play ranked games where none of that stuff applies, or there's a tournament mode if you want to play it offline, and all the characters are level to 20, and everything's sort of on an even playing field.
And it's not like Overwatch where you're just you level up and you get 1 box and you're good to go for the next hour or whatever. This, you are constantly getting it. Even if you lose a match, they might throw an arm your way. Or, or you win a tournament and they're like, here's 2 loot boxes, and you're like, holy crap, I'm going to go open those right now. Or even if this is a new component, you can join guilds where there's no co-op, but you can be a team in this guild earning kind of like Clash Royale or something like that, where you're earning points every day for your guild, and then you earn boxes from that or unique experience points.
Yeah.
So they're constantly showering you, like almost like Diablo. Just a boss explodes, there's parts. That's like the frequency you're getting stuff in this.
And they give you the multiverse gives you a ton of objectives. Like you'll enter one multiverse and there'll be like 3 stages or something that you can complete. But within those stages, it'll say, here are some bonus objectives. Like if you do this one stage as this character, or if you do this stage without throwing, we'll throw in another reward if you complete all 3 of these sets. And then those objectives, those missions themselves will have all these other objectives. Like if you do well enough, we'll just give you loot boxes, and also just for completing it, you'll get this bonus. And then some of the harder ones will give you sort of specific, like if you want a full set of epic Batman gear, here's this one objective that is super difficult, but if you do it, you'll have like a really nice Batman.
And you're not getting stuff like, the one downside to this is you're not getting like Batman Beyond costume, right? Like, you're not building that. From what I know, you're getting, like, unique gear, making your own Batman. You can maybe make one look like Batman Beyond's, but you're creating your own version of Batman. There is a separate form of currency, I can't remember the name of it. Source crystals that, hey, surprise, surprise, you can go into the store, spend real money on it.
Okay.
That is for shaders, which is not a big deal, because you will unlock some of those as you play the game. So changing your character into different colors. But also premium costumes. And I'm guessing that's where most of the movie tie-ins, comic tie-ins, The Dark Knight Returns,
Harley's Natural.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's where that's going to reside. So you're probably going to have to pay for it through DLC anyway, but I think some of it's going to live in this area as well. Time will tell on that one.
Yeah, but just to be clear, like, none of it is sort of bonus stats. You can't sort of buy your way to the best character.
Okay.
Yeah, for ranked matches. Yeah, that's for sure. They even everything out. So no matter how powerful you make your character, everybody's on the same playing field for ranked.
Gotcha. And also, if you go into a player match and you're level 20 and someone else has like a level 3 character, they'll level up to 20, but they won't have any sort of like specific gear bonuses. So they'll be sort of matched up, but not quite.
Serial, you're an expert when it comes to the fighting game genre.
Sure.
We haven't tapped into your knowledge enough. Normally just stop talking about Marvel vs. Capcom so much. Philosophically, high level, you look at the path of NetherRealm, even just from Injustice 1 to Injustice 2, what does the evolution say about the overall genre?
I think if you look at pretty much any other product on the market, I think the one thing that I don't think they do enough of is sort of have sort of in character specific tutorials where they say, here's how you use this character. But this is sort of a very different approach from most fighting games, where the whole point is to teach you the game and then have you play online against other people. This was sort of Street Fighter. This is the thing that Street Fighter 4 lived and died on. Of we want to get you playing against other people as much as possible. And for, a number of reasons, we're not going to have anything else for you to do. But, like, Guilty Gear will have all these, in-depth tutorials of, like, here's how this character plays. Go play against other people.
Yeah.
I think NetherRealm's sort of philosophy is just, you don't have to play against other people if you don't want to. Here's all this stuff. If you just want a game to play by yourself, here's all this stuff you can do.
Is there an audience for that?
I think considering how well those games sell, like Mortal Kombat X was, like, one of the biggest selling games of the year that came out. And how well, if you go to their YouTube channel, like, all the trailers and stuff they are like easily doing millions of views, so it's super popular, and people, the fighting game community has latched onto this game pretty quickly. Like, there are people who really want to play this game, and it'll just be another avenue for Sonic Fox to win a whole bunch of money.
Oh, perfect. So it seems like they're focusing on single player, focusing on, like, hey, you don't need to spread out. Some people might see that as insecurity about the high level play. Do you think that it stands up on a high level?
I definitely do think it does. Like, you look at some of the there's one sort of Gorilla Grodd Infinite that got discovered that I'm guessing will patch out eventually. But
hang on, what is Infinite?
It's just you do a jumping attack and then it cancels into this like forward kick, because usually if you do a jumping heading attack,
combo forever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What quick follow up? What's a Gorilla Grodd?
Gorilla Grodd, I think he's a Flash bad guy.
He's all throughout Justice League, I would say. Yeah, but
Flash before Grodd.
They've got their we've seen the film.
Yeah. He's got talking gorilla, and he has Gorilla City.
Sorry, DC fans. It's cool. I love some comics. Very fun. Very fun to tap in.
But they play very differently. Sort of from a fundamental standpoint, is that Low's attacks aren't as important. So in Street Fighter, you can start a combo by low and then go into the rest of your combo. Whereas in this, it's a lot harder to start a combo from a low attack. But overheads are a lot more common in this game. And then considering the number of defensive options, like we covered earlier, it is very fast, and there's just a lot of options for getting in and out of combos if you're on the defensive. That I think it will end up proving pretty popular in that regard.
Is there any way you can compare it to the obvious example of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? Do you feel like one's going to have longer legs in the high level scene for years out?
It's hard to say, because if Marvel vs. Capcom isn't a good game in the long run, and it's just not, it's maybe not going to fizzle out. But I think that this specifically, I think, has the legs to keep going for a while, considering how much it's going to motivate people to keep playing. Versus Marvel vs. Capcom doesn't look like it's going to have as much for single players to do. So, but on a competitive, I definitely think there are people who are going to stick with Marvel, because there are people dying for a new Marvel game. It's been a long time since we've had a new one. So I think both of them will end up having good enough scenes to propel them into the wild, assuming that Marvel vs. Capcom is good.
Yeah. Well, hey, we know Injustice 2 is good. What'd you give it, Reiner?
9 out of 10.
Not too shabby. You should play that game. Well, I would love to. Turns out it's not on Steam.
Yeah,
no PC cowards.
Well, what happened with didn't Mortal Kombat have a terrible launch?
Yeah, a lot of WB stuff did.
Yeah. I think Shadow Mortar was the only decent PC launch one.
Yeah, I can't believe they just throw in the towel though. Do you know if it's going to be coming?
I think they said eventually, but
it's dead. PC game's pretty much dead.
I was disheartened to see that not on Steam. It is on mobile in a big bad way, and I checked out the mobile version. Like, that's crazy. It's the same assets, same moves. At least like the look of like the finishing moves and stuff. I think like the way you control it obviously is very different, but it seems competent if you like that kind of free to play currency up the butt yin yang.
And it speaks with the console game, so you earn stuff in both if you sync them up.
You get a skin for Cyborg and some other bonuses, I think.
Well, hey, let's keep fighting and move on to the natural rival. Forget Marvel vs. Capcom. When it comes to Injustice 2, we gotta talk about ARMS on the Nintendo Switch.
The other big fighting game coming out this year.
Man, it's just gonna blow everything out of the water. This is gonna be the new eSport.
Sarcasm already. So, I was a little skeptical about this game. The idea of a new Nintendo IP should be exciting. Ryu's was a little skeptical. Kyle, you played a lot of it, and you think now?
I started this conversation sarcastic, but I'm actually excited for this game.
It's fun to be sarcastic.
I'm intrigued by it. I haven't played any of it yet, but it looks like it'll be alright.
The event that I went to play the game, I think Nintendo did in a smart way, where they were like, all right, let's play ARMS. Here's a couple tips, and they kind of showed us like how to hold the controller as well and stuff. Like took their time to
Here's how you turn on your system.
Here's some Kool-Aid.
The systems were already on.
Take a break after an hour.
Exactly, but the thing that was nice about it is like I didn't go in just like swinging my fists. Like I went in kind of, all right, here's how I know how to play this game, and I got to play like tons of rounds. I think we played it for like 3 hours or something like that. So after getting someone to kind of like give me like, here's how to play the game well, and then playing it for like 3 hours, I walked away pretty excited for Arms. Like, I had a good time playing the game.
And so it seemed like the big takeaway is that there is strategy. This was what you were saying, and then I look at the B-roll footage and cut together a video, which is on the site now, and boy, I couldn't see it in there. It still just looked like so much chaos.
I mean, it definitely is not as deep as a typical fighter, but like there's a lot of room for dodging and jumping and like using and like taking in the right fists with you and using them correctly. And it is a boxing game, but it kind of slows everything down because you're throwing fists, and then the fists take a while to get to your opponent. You have time to perform counters. There's more windows to see things. For someone like me, who's not really a fan of fighting games, I don't really enjoy a lot of fighting games. I had a good time with it, and I felt like I was coming up with tactics pretty quickly, and like I found a character that I liked. We had like a tournament that I actually did okay in. Like, I made it like 2 rounds, which is good for Kyle. I almost won, really, if you guys want.
Yeah. He sent us a picture of the tournament board.
I was
like,
very
look,
proud
at
of
the
myself.
final round.
Yeah, you guys know me. You guys have watched me play video games.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Generally disappointing.
Kyle,
thank you, Siri.
Well, you just have to put your arms and punch out with the controllers.
Hold on.
That's right. Yeah.
When you guys first played the Switch in New York, in January, was that? You guys came back and you were like, "Won't you switch arms?" Well, hey, we said arms not sure about what you switch. I think, but yeah, I mean, those two were in the same conversation, like being very skeptical. Don't know if they're going to turn out. Definitely skeptical.
I didn't play it.
So you played 3 hours. That was different. You still had an answer. Why?
I didn't know. This was the first time I played it. Did you play it then, Hanson?
Yeah, I did. Again, I played like 1 round. You went pretty much like confused. You're on a show floor. Like, all right, that's it. Using more controls and punch. All right, my guy has sprint. All right, that's it.
Like, if you watch like the footage that we have, where they just like really was just like, all right, here, try this out. Like, everyone's doing big, broad punches, and like really, when I played, I had my arms down by my side, and I would just kind of tilt my hands a little bit. And I would just use a small movement, like push forward, basically, to do a right-hand punch.
It's like the key to dancing well in the club. You don't want to flail all over, right? You want to like just small little movements. All you need, just Commander Shepard. That's all you need.
I do wish they did not let us play without motion controls, which was odd. Like, they were insistent that that's the best way to play it. I don't know if that's true.
If you're on the airplane or something like that. But I mean,
really,
but I'm curious though, because I think a lot of people are going to play it that way in mobile mode, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, you can definitely play without motion controls.
So how would that work
then? Let us. I don't know. I mean, I think
just tap to.
I think maybe it would just be buttons to punch and then the control stick to move, and then maybe you can use both control sticks. Have a little aim on your punches after you throw them. So I think maybe you can use the control sticks to kind of aim them a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how it's going to play.
So all the stuff they showed up, it certainly seems like more variety than I expected, like in the different arenas and stuff like that, different modes. Is there a single player story?
I don't know. I asked them about it and they were being coy. So I really don't know what the single player.
That'd be cool.
Here's my question for you, Kyle. By the end of your time with it, do you feel like if you were able to predict what your opponent was going to do, that you had the option to say, okay, he's going to jump, I know what to do to counter that?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like that's the foundation of a lot of sort of like good competitive games is do I have the tools at my disposal to counter if I know what my opponent's going to do, can I counter it?
Did you find Ramen Girl Infinites?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Okay.
I'm sorry for joking.
Marilla Cloud is also in that game, and that's where the Infinite comes from.
And there's a new mode we played. There's the just standard 1 versus 1, which was fun, and then there was 2 versus 2, which is like chaotic but fun. And then they had hoops, which was cool because like basically that mode, all you're trying to do is pull off grabs, and when you execute a grab, you throw the other player into a basketball hoop, and it was fun. It was like goofy and weird.
That sounds cool.
Are you like controlling them? Is it like using magnesis and Breath of the Wild, or you're trying to?
No. It's just pulling off grabs, and it's the closer you are to the hoop, the more likely it is to go in, the fewer points you get. If you can get a 3-pointer if you're far away from the hoop, you might miss stuff like that.
That sounds pretty good.
I'm just going off what I've seen on Twitter. People comparing it to like this is going to be the Switch's Punch Out, but everything I'm hearing is it's more fight night.
It's
more competitive. Yeah, more of a competitive fighter than like an arcade. Would you call that an arcade fighter? Where it's like, I would call it. I think it goes working against AI. It doesn't seem like that's what this is. If you're saying you don't even know if there's a single player game, it's more multiplayer focused.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might. You could call it an arcade game because it's pretty simplified. Like it's not overly complicated. So in that sense, yeah, arcade. But yeah, definitely more in common with like a fight night where you want to block and you want to take your time with like throwing your punches. Where like Punch Out, you're trying to get in there quickly usually. And
you're looking for tells, right?
So, but you seem to be more invested in ARMS lore than probably anybody else in the world right now. Yeah, I think so. What can you tell us about the story and the world of ARMS?
My interest has, since they first announced it, was like, why do some people in this world have springy arms, and why do some people, like, there's people with normal arms, and then there's people with these weird springy arms. Was there surgery to get them to be a part of the sport? But then there's a character named Twintel that they revealed, who has her normal arms and then fights with her hair. So I don't know if she's just an exception, like she just didn't have to.
What's happening with the characters on the outside of the arena, like cheering on? What do they look like?
They look like normal humans with normal arms.
Oh, wow! And there's betting on these freaks.
Yeah, they're usually dressed up. Tournament. They're usually dressed up as the characters they're rooting for.
You know what it reminds me of? That movie Real Steel with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
That movie's great, by the way.
It's better than it had any right to
tearjerker.
Yeah, that's true.
Watch it.
Clearly rips off an old Twilight Zone episode, and it's confusing whether or not it's even licensed. Remember how they advertised the Xbox 720 in that movie?
Yeah, right.
That was really dumb and weird.
that Michael Bay movie, The Island, they had a future Xbox.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God, Microsoft's getting all over the place. Like the wrong name, too. That's true. So, ARMS is out next month?
ARMS is out June 16th. Right, the Friday that we get back from E3.
Hey, that's nice.
Yeah.
I remember when Last of Us launched right after E3. But that was awesome because I went home and just relaxed on the couch. I was dead. I couldn't walk anywhere.
Well, there's here's a game where you can play your arms. The Last of Us.
Yeah. God.
But overall, I am excited for it. I think it will be a fun multiplayer game.
Okay.
Switch.
All right. Hey, there we go. Real quick. You also played on the new 2DS, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing it feels good.
It's very light. Lighter than I expected it to be, and you don't have to take the back off to replace your memory card anymore, which is nice. It seems like a nice little system. It's still a little confusing that it exists, but sure, feels solid. It's like I really can't overstate like how light it is. Like that was the thing that I was like, maybe I would consider getting something like this because I can't even feel it in my hands.
So best case scenario. So you played what? Ever Oasis and Hey Pikmin
and Miitopia.
Quick. What do you think of all three?
Ever Oasis seems cool. It seems like it has an interesting loop of you building out a town in the desert. One thing I liked is like you collect items, and then you use those items to restock stores. And as those stores sell items, you actually make profit from that.
Is this like a weird Dark Cloud action RPG inspired type thing?
I haven't played Dark Cloud.
It sounds like it. But I read Kyle's preview for the magazine, and I was like, this sounds really neat, Kyle. And he's like, yeah, shut up.
I'm Kyle.
I'm really an asshole.
Get banned. And he flipped him the finger. We got to talk about that. You know, good to me.
That's pretty much what I've been.
Are you okay? This is all that matters. Can you literally determine exactly where to place each building, or is it just like upgrade to stage 2, stage 3?
You have spots. So like there's like there are like 10 plots, and you can choose where to put the shops in those plots.
That sounds okay.
So yeah, it'll be. I think it'll be cool to kind of watch your town grow as you're going out and fighting and solving Zelda style puzzles.
And Hey Pikmin.
Hey Pikmin is not what I expected. It's just like it's a platformer. It's an action platformer.
Yeah.
You just you see Pikmin on screen, you call them to you, and then you like tap on enemies to throw your Pikmin, and you don't even I don't think you're building an army. I think you just get the Pikmin you find in that one level, and you use them to complete the level, and then move on.
Weird.
Yeah. It's very simplified. It seems like Pikmin for kids is what they want it to be.
Is there an exclamation point?
Hey, exclamation point.
Okay,
Pikmin.
so it's not Hey Pikmin. Hey Pikmin, it's Hey Pikmin.
Yes.
And the sequel is Hey You Pikmin.
Yeah, you Pikmin. With Pikachu.
That's perfect. Miitopia is a weirdo thing.
Yeah. Miitopia was really underwhelming. It's totally on rails, like to the point where I was like, why am I even pressing buttons?
What is it?
It's an RPG. It has more in common with Tomodachi Life,
yeah.
Where it's all about like, hey, you have Miis that look like your friends, maybe celebrities. They have personalities. Let's watch them interact. Oh, by the way, you can watch them walk on a trail and sometimes do turn-based battles.
It feels like a Street Pass game.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's Find Me, I think is what it was called.
You got to kill those meat
to do that.
Let me tell you.
It seems like because that game's cool and it's popular, and I think they wanted. I was thinking you would be in control of like take your me that looks like you, and you can walk them around a field and fight stuff. But it really is like you just watch them walk along a path. You can choose which path they take, and then they talk to each other. Maybe they get along, maybe they don't. Their personality plays into how they fight. I'm not excited for that.
All right.
Yeah. So it's more of a Mistopia?
Sure.
Okay. Surreal?
I like that cereal. It's really
Good. Thank you.
Hey, let's talk about The Surge. Rander, I imagine you spent a lot of time with this game. You're talking about it a lot. I still don't know what the hell this thing is.
over 50 hours. And the development team has even come out and said it's Deck 13 Interactive. They've even said it's like Dark Souls in space. Dark Souls meets Rise of the Robots, if you guys remember that game way back when.
Nope.
Robotic fighting game. But basically, it's a sci-fi setting. Your character, Warren, arrives at this complex called Creo via train. You're seeing these ads about like how Creo wants to heal the world after all these wars and global warming and all that. You know, a do-good corporation.
I'm into that.
Globe's been Warren. The doors on the train open up, and it says, "Okay, leave the train." And all of a sudden, you realize you're in a wheelchair, and you're like, "Okay, this is interesting. Where's this going?" And you go to this lab, and you get fitted with an exosuit. So Creo's going to allow you to walk again, right? And you're like, "Okay, this is cool." But as you're getting fitted into the suit, you aren't sedated properly. Yeah, brace, dude, brace for it. Screws are put into your body, over your shirt, just blood flying everywhere, and all of a sudden, you awaken in kind of a junkyard setting. In the suit, you can walk again. You're kind of like, "Oh my god, this is crazy."
Well, that's good.
But there are other people in this world like you who have been fitted with these suits that are not aware like you are.
You're in like a medical graveyard?
Kinda, yeah. And the whole game is survive, find out what's going on at Creo, what happened here, why is this not going as planned. So you go tunnel deeper into this facility to kind of find the answer to that, which is kind of neat where it goes. It's a little cliched, but
the gameplay, I mean, are Dark Souls fans, should they pay attention to this?
Yeah,
People have been clamoring for like that From Software, Armored Core, Dark Souls.
You know, Deck 13's the team that did Lords of the Fallen, which I thought was a very good Dark Souls clone.
I didn't much care for it, but yeah.
Nobody cares like it. Nobody cares what you think. But Dan Tack and I, you know, the experts again in this genre, really enjoyed that.
Sure.
But the mechanics are solid, and they do something different, and they allow for limb-specific targeting. And it's actually handled really easily, just flipping along the right analog stick to head, arms, body, legs. And you'll see
a theme for this episode, by the way. It's body parts.
That's right. So you'll see, like, if something shows up yellow, that means it's armored, right? If it's blue, that means it's exposed. So if you attack an exposed body part, appendage, that means they're going to take on more damage. They'll be easier to kill. But if you take on an armor piece, it's going to take some time. There's a chance you could really die in this battle, and it being like Dark Souls, that could be crushing, right? You might lose all the scrap, the souls in this game, in that battle. But if you can get it to a point where you can perform a execution move, a finishing move, you will, like, let's say I'm targeting Kyle's arm, and I lop off his arm. The piece of armor he had on that, I can take, and then I can equip.
Then he's got to go get a ribbon arm.
There's no other solution.
Yeah.
So is it a prequel to ARMS?
It is.
That's weird.
But so you are like taking down these other humans in this world. Most of the enemies are humanoid, all kind of looking like junk. You know, they're all wearing different pieces of armor, and your character just looks like this kind of weird machination of red and blue and yellows at times. In a junkyard setting. But it becomes so repetitive. Like, each environment is humanoid after humanoid. Sometimes they have a different attack pattern, but it becomes so mechanical. And, like, by the end of the game, I was just like, okay, this guy's going to charge at me. I'll counter it. The fighting mechanics are very good, though. You know, evasive moves, counters. They even have, like, the ability to jump over attacks or duck below them. I never got the hang of that. I just kind of did the quick dodge, soul style, or blocking. But that option is there. It feels really good. Your weapons level up through use. And this is a big thing because you really got to grind zones to take down bosses. And in doing that, you know, Souls games, when you watch professional Souls players run through the game, or, you know, people that are really good at it, they just sprint through zones a lot of times to the mist door. This game, you don't really want to do that because you do want to grind experience points and up, the levels of your weapons. The downside to this is you're not switching weapons that often because when you switch weapon classes, that means you're starting from scratch. You might have a level 20 weapon. Now you're going down to level 1. Good luck in that zone you're in, right?
Yeah.
So you are sticking with that weapon. It's cool that it levels up, but it is a grind. It's the same enemy over and over and over, and the environments all start to bleed together as well. So, cool mechanics, innovative fighting system that works very well, cool idea. Repetition is the killer here.
Is there any online stuff? Like, is there people leaving notes?
No.
You can't be invaded?
No.
I could leave you a note if you started to play it, though. So,
Yeah.
What'd you give it?
7.
There we go.
So it's okay. I think if you're into those Souls games, I hate comparing games to other ones, but this one is inescapable. Like, you really do need to take a look at this because there's some cool stuff here.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Kyle. Hello. Farpoint VR. Matt Burtz reviewed it. I believe he also gave it a 7.
They did.
The old 7 train. What did you think of this PSVR experience that Sony is really getting behind? There's a ton of advertising out there for this thing.
It's also, I guess, the way to buy it is you get the game, but also it comes with the Move controller assault rifle thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Zapper made specifically for
I thought
Farpoint.
Just real quickly, I thought that worked as a shell, and you could just put the Move controller in it. That thing has a Move controller built into it. That's its only function.
Can you use it for other games? Can I play Johann Sebastian Joust with the?
Maybe actually.
Maybe so
it's pretty cool. It made me really nauseated because you have full control of your motion. You just use a control stick to walk around. But the shooting feels really good, especially if you have this gun thing. You can literally, pull the gun up to your eyes and look down the laser sights, and you actually improve your aim that way. And Burtz and I played the sort of co-op mode, which you just take on waves, and there were a lot of pushing through the nausea. There was a lot of cool stuff where seeing a sniper and seeing that laser sight come through in a VR setting was really cool. I immediately looked up and I was like, Burtz, there's someone up there, we got to get them. And the shooting felt really good. That's the best thing about the game is the shooting. But I think I'm reading Burtz's reviews. I totally agree with them. The environments are really repetitive and kind of bland. And the story is, I played through the first hour of the story. It's pretty cool. It's a goes wrong in space kind of story, which is my favorite genre. Of course, I love when stuff goes wrong in space, and you're just you're fighting bugs and robots and some kind of humanoid aliens and stuff. And
it's nice to have a VR game that's technically not a shooting gallery because you can walk around a little bit, but the main star of the show is kind of elaborate.
I mean, it did not feel like a shooting gallery.
Okay.
Since you have full control, it did feel like I was playing a first-person shooter. And I mean, it's not this savior for PlayStation VR, but I mean, I think it's probably one of the best, maybe best, if not better, games that I've played in PSVR.
So it's not more about get this game to get a VR to get this game. It's if you have a VR, probably
this is a cool game to play.
I mean, this is a full-on game. It's not just
it's 6 to 8 hours.
Proof of concept tech demo. Yeah,
with at least I only played the first hour, but in Burtz's review, he said the story's interesting consistently. You're just kind of following these two scientists and trying to figure out how they survived. And
he said the voice acting's very good in it.
Yeah,
and this is only PSVR.
Yes, it is not Oculus or Vive or anything.
No, you can't play it in just TV.
No, I believe it is just VR.
Well, I say you play with a controller and not the gun thing.
Yes, you can.
How much is that? How much is the gun and game package?
I think it's $80 or maybe
for both.
I think it's an extra $30.
Yeah,
okay.
It's nice to see Sony swinging big and trying to make an original game, but I feel like is the deck now clear for E3? Are there any other big PSVR games that haven't?
That was the big one.
Yeah.
Their big kind of, I guess you could call it AAA title.
Even last E3, there was a crazy booth for Farpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I wonder about is looking at that gun. Is what else are you guys doing with this? Is this just for this game?
Maybe it'll work for Dreams, Molecules game.
So he comes out wearing little teddy bears with a gun.
VR experience where you'll use it as a bow somehow.
One thing I'll say, PSVR is still selling very well.
Yeah?
There's not a lot of units out there. It's over 1 million, but good luck finding it in stores, right? It's doing very well. So
buy nausea medication.
I think it comes.
I mean, honestly,
Dramamine.
It does. Just real quick, it does have the option to let you do that sort of zoom version of moving where you kind of warp around.
Oh, cool.
But it just, even though that makes me less sick, it just feels odd. I would almost rather be sick to feel like I'm actually moving through this environment than sort of, zip around and it just feels strange.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Hey, speaking of sevens, we're gonna talk about it. The new Fire Emblem.
That's right.
JV also gave it a 7, right?
Yeah.
I think so. All right. So we talked about it a little bit last week. JV couldn't be here this week, but sir, you've been playing it.
Yeah, I played about 5 hours of it.
Okay.
JV's sort of big complaint in the review was that it's very grindy, and I tend to agree. So, like, so far, even as early as I am, I felt like I encountered a fight that I didn't feel super prepared for. So basically, my strategy was to go back to a cave because the game has sort of explorable dungeons. I don't know if you guys covered this.
Yeah.
But you go into these caves and you can just endlessly grind them until you're leveled up, or you don't feel like they give you as much experience anymore. So, so far that has been sort of my least favorite aspect, is having to sort of, between every sort of main fight, is to go back and have to do a couple of grind fights. But I'm digging parts. I'm digging the presentation of it. So so far, I think almost every voice line has been acted. So
yeah.
And the characters feel distinct. They talk to each other really well. The support conversations aren't. So far, everyone's been super negative to each other. Everyone's just been like in the every time you like in previous Fire Emblem games, you could walk next to an ally and have a support conversation, and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, it's like funny seeing you here while we're fighting. Let the anger consume you." Yeah, and it has its uses. But everyone just seems to be like, "Don't talk to me. What are you talking? Don't."
You're really into these little conversations in games.
Yeah, I mean, they're like some of the most characterization you get a lot of the time. But it's weird. But for the most part, it's typical fantasy story. These two kids sort of grow up with each other, and then they realize they're both soldiers and stuff, and the game sort of swaps back and forth between their two campaigns because they're separated.
Yeah.
But so far, the combat definitely does seem harder. Even in fights that I knew what I was doing, it seemed like everyone was doing less damage than usual. So fights went on a little bit longer. I'm getting into some areas where some of the enemies will just straight up destroy me. But I think that was the intent of like you can whale these enemies and they're really easy to kill. But if they hit you once, you're almost dead. Which like that part I'm fine with. And one thing that I think is pretty cool is that if you can set it to hard, like I'm playing on a hard classic, which means if your character dies, they're gone forever. But one cool thing is that you can sort of rewind, basically turns until, okay, I can go back enough turns to where I don't have to make that mistake anymore instead of having to turn off the DS and turn it on again.
Yeah. So yeah, check out JV's review if you want to learn more.
Yeah, and
we were mixed results. We were kind of on the low end of the scoring system compared to all of the critics. Where are you kind of sitting on this right now?
Having only played 5 hours of it, I'm kind of where JV is. Like it's okay. It's okay. It's not crazy like Fire Emblem Awakening was, but
yeah. Right on. So you guys want to move on to some great community emails?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it. And welcome back to the Informer Show. We have some great emails from the community here. People sent in wonderful emails to podcast@GameInformer.com. If you want to send something in, podcast@GameInformer.com. We encourage you. We think it's a good idea.
Do it. It's okay to do it?
Yeah, absolutely do it. Questions, comments, news stories you want us to cover, feedback, criticism, any email that you can conceivably send that'll make this a better program.
Cash for gold, send it our way.
Absolutely. Spam. Podcast@GameInformer.com. It's your one-stop shop for wasting my Wednesday afternoons. I love it. I love reading everyone. I'm sorry we don't get to them all. But anyways, we're going to choose our absolute favorite of the bunch and ship them out something real nice. So, first email, Eric Garcia from San Diego. I happened to receive my copy of the magazine shortly after listening to last week's podcast and decided to try and add up the total hours it would take to play all the top 100 RPGs. No MMOs were included, and neither was Path of Exile. I used howlongtobeat.com and added up the hours or how long it would take to beat every game. We talked about this on last week's podcast, and he did it. It's amazing. So, just main story, adding everything up, it came to be 3,300 hours, or roughly 138 days.
So not even a year, right? 138 days?
Yeah. So you can chop, people. You can do this. Let's go. Average RPG on the list takes 34.5 hours to beat. You rock. Thank you, Eric. Also, if you're
super cool. This is already not to play all our cards. This is already running for best email.
It's very good that he did this. Going for 100% in all the games would take 8,741 hours, or the equivalent of 364 days. Still not a year.
Wow.
You can complete all these.
Minus the MMOs.
Yeah, or gets messy.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you, Eric. That's a great email.
Yeah, that's great. Is it weird that the total time for Basic Story is almost is a little over how much time I've spent with Dota 2?
How much time have you spent with Dota 2?
3,100 hours.
Wow. What have you learned?
Not much.
What was the best moment you've ever had in Dota 2?
Dota 2. It was one of those games where we were down by like 30,000 gold, and
then you just ended up losing?
Yeah. We slowly
got to win it back.
It was 3,300. Everyone hated me because I was playing techies, and no one likes to play against or with the techies. But I defended the ancient until everyone else got strong enough to defeat the enemy. And
good job, dude.
Yeah. That victory from 2 years ago? Yeah, I feel pretty
good. Don't let Kyle be sarcastic. Look, you did it.
Look, I'm never sarcastic. I know what you're talking about.
God. Mike from Tall Timbers, Maryland. Just bizarre. He's talking about the top 100 RPG list, and he brings up Earthbound's GamePro marketing ad, talking about how the game stunk, all this stuff. And he's like, do you guys remember this ad? Not only do we remember it, Mike, we talk about it later in the show with Frank. But what are the odds that Frank would bring that up? And then I check the emails. Like, why would someone write it?
Yeah, you got to make sure
Frank.
You got to establish the timeline because you talked about it with Frank.
Yeah,
and checked emails, and then there was an email about Earthbound.
Wild. Anyways,
stick around.
Josh from Cornig, New York says, "Hey Ben and all, if you were to make your best guess, what district do you think the next Elder Scrolls game would take place in?" District. Elder Scrolls 3 was Morrowind, 4 was Cyrodiil, 5 Skyrim. Where would 6 be?
Hammerfell.
They'd go back to Hammerfell?
Yeah.
I would want them. I'd want the opening instead of like leaving the sewers, the dungeons. Like those games always open up with. Just strap somebody to a dumb-looking rocket ship and just leave Tamriel forever. And then that's like the great opening of the game is going out to the next planet.
And then it's Manhattan. It's Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh.
There's been Snowy Mountain. There's been like swamp, right? There's been.
I like the simplified versions of there's outside, swamp, and Snowy Mountain. Those are the locations.
How else would you describe Skyrim?
Yeah, probably that.
Yeah, what's left? I mean,
tropical, I guess.
Parking lots.
Parking lots. What is this pavement? I've never heard of this.
I had this obsession with superhero movies where it seems like over the last 15 years especially, there's so much fighting in streets. And I complained about it on Twitter, and everyone always says, well, where else are they going to fight? Come on, what do you want them to do? But just get away from streets.
Warehouse.
Do the Dragon Ball Z thing where it's like, we're not going to fight here, we're going to go out in the middle of the desert.
Have dignity. Yeah, I would love to see a fight in the middle of the desert. I guess Thor.
They had a fight in the airport. Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah, you got to
that was great. That was a unique setting, totally. Or even like out in the woods with the first Avengers.
Yeah.
That was something interesting.
Get on a cruise boat or something. Go international waters.
Yeah. I was at Bethesda Game Studios, 2 years ago for Fallout 4? 1 year ago? When did it come out? 1 year ago? Yeah. And I walked around the office, and I was watching the TV screens and the computer monitors, what people were working on.
Yeah.
And the story.
Okay.
That's it.
So you know something.
That's it.
Does it involve leaves?
You never know.
Let's stop and just break down what Reiner just said. What are you getting out of this, Reiner?
Well, you're following up. I was at Game Studio.
Do you, in your best case scenario, you want people to tweet at you and say, "Tell us, Daddy"?
Oh yeah,
tell us what you saw.
Please, Mr. Rhino. Please, don't you know?
And so you know something here? Is that?
Yeah. Well, maybe I don't know. Mostly solitaire happening.
Everyone's just playing Candy Crush.
The next Elder Scrolls takes place in solitaire. Big fans of
alt tabbing out of
Skyrim for Switch.
Yeah, maybe. Anthony from Auburn, Pennsylvania. I feel like he writes in a lot, but he's great. Says, "Hey Ben, have you ever played a game, enjoyed it, and then later realized it was very obviously inspired by a way better version of the same type of game? When I was younger, I put hours and hours into a game for the PS1 called Motor Toon Grand Prix. It wasn't until way later in my life that I even knew what Mario Kart was and realized Motor Toon Grand Prix was essentially a ripoff of that franchise. I think that's from Gran Turismo's developers."
It is.
Yeah.
Polyphony.
There we go. Thank you. I just picture kids these days playing all games like Ocean Horn or PlayStation All-Stars without knowing a thing about the original and better counterparts. I had this with the worst thing that I never thought I would bring up on this podcast, but there was a Wishbone game, a Wishbone CD-ROM
show about the dog.
The very same.
Would read books. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just a collection of horrific Wishbone-themed minigames, and there was one where you're playing Wishbone, and he's collecting, dog treats or some garbage that dogs eat. And he's just running around this maze away from, classic Universal monsters. So it's like, watch out for the vampire. Here's Frankenstein over here. And it was just a Pac-Man clone. But I played this so much, before I ever saw Pac-Man.
Wow.
That, we absolutely loved this game. And it turns out we just liked Pac-Man realize it. The complete
Classic gaming franchises like Wishbone.
Yeah.
No, I had the same experience with Banjo-Kazooie. I played Banjo-Kazooie before I ever played Super Mario 64, and so I actually had my copy of Banjo-Kazooie before I ever had an N64.
Who are you people?
And so when I played Mario 64, I was like, this isn't good as Banjo-Kazooie. Stop blowing my mind. Yeah.
I had like a C-tier snowboarding game for Nintendo 64. I think it was like Twisted Edge or something.
Snowboard Kids?
No, it wasn't even snowboard.
1080 snowboard?
No, it wasn't 1080. It was like
980?
some other crappy snowboarding game. I was like, man, this is awesome. And then like I went to a friend's house with a PS2 and SSX, and I was like, what the hell? What have I been doing with my life?
Reiner, you've been too smart all your life. You
Yeah,
don't make
I'm
these mistakes at all. You're a grown bro.
Grown? A grown bro.
You were born grown up, is what I was going
You're a
for.
real Wishbone,
I like grown
Reiner.
bro.
What's the story, man?
You're a classic grown bro. Hey, G.I. Crew, says Cameron Celdardo. I don't know. My question is, what is a franchise or game you were surprised got a sequel? To me, Kid Icarus getting a third game after, I think, 21 years was pretty surprising. What the surprising sequel? We just talked about one with JB not too long ago on this show. Some first-person thing, those bloody...
Wolfenstein?
No, something in that vein, though.
Titanfall 2. I'm just listing things JB likes now.
Anyways, the one that came to my mind immediately was Afro Samurai 2. Came out 2 years ago, maybe. They pulled it from all stores now. It is horrific, but I still have it on my tower, and I'll never delete it now because I tried playing that, and it is rough. Like Sonic 2006, rough.
Is 50 Cent one? There was 50 Cent Bulletproof and then Blood in the Sand, right?
Yeah.
And Blood in the Sand is awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great co-op game.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if the timing was strange, but I was very happy and surprised when a sequel to Darksiders was announced. I didn't think that game was going to get a sequel.
2, not 3.
Yeah, well, I guess you could put 3 in there too. I'm hesitant to be excited about 3 because I haven't played it yet. But like, I really loved the first one. So when 2 was on Game Informer's cover, I thought that was awesome, and like I was surprised that it was getting a sequel, and I played it and enjoyed it.
I was actually pretty surprised at Mafia 3, actually. I really liked Mafia 2, and I played it. It's like, okay, this is another franchise that'll be one of those, early franchises that just fell by the wayside, but Mafia 3 I was pretty surprised by.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
Elder Scrolls 6, Hammerfall. I was surprised when I saw that.
Blake Macho says, hey, Ben and G.I. Crew, I have to admit, I didn't think I'd ever see a Sonic game where you're able to create your own character. But what I've seen so far from Sonic Forces has me really intrigued, to say the least. What do you guys think of this announcement? They just released a trailer yesterday for Sonic Forces where you can make your own little Sonic character. I actually think it's kind of cool. It's going to lead to some really ugly weirdos, which I'm excited for.
Yeah.
But just the idea of, in theory, the Sonic team embracing that crazy fan art community where everyone, including Tim Turi, is just obsessed with sketching their weirdo sexual deviants from the Sonic universe, and now you can just put one in
it's pronounced Deviant Art.
Oh, I'm sorry. It seems like the right direction. I mean, I don't know if I will ever touch that character creator, but I think lots of other people will, and they'll be very happy about it.
So the right direction for a Sonic game is not to include Sonic in it?
Well, Sonic as minimally as possible.
You know what would be cool is if Sonic Forces, if you're listening to this, is to have a person.
Hello, it's me, Sonic Forces.
So if you create your own character, and then it creates the old retro version of them, you know, like in Sonic Generations, they have, and in Sonic Forces as well, they have new Sonic, old Sonic. It'd be cool if they made like an automatic old weird retro version of your created character.
So you make your character standing in there and going like this?
Yeah,
the title finger.
Oh wait, are you talking about like a 3D model? Because they can squat it down and then give your character like a little pot belly, right? And then that's all.
Change the eye color, change like the hue just a little bit of its dumb red shirt, and that's it.
That would be very cool.
And then they all have. But let's see, JT writes in and says, alright, so this is confusing. He says, people are weird, especially when you think they're alone. For instance, I once showed up early to an old job of mine to find my boss alone, reciting the setup to a joke. I thought nothing of it. Then he responded, seemingly unknowing of the punchline he was about to unleash upon himself. To this day, I've never heard a laugh so concerningly genuine for what I can only describe as a one-man, multiple-personality knock-knock joke. Have you ever caught someone or been caught doing something embarrassing because they thought no one was around? This is JT, who was at GlitchCon recently. He's a very nice guy. I caught Wade Wojcik singing in the control room one day. Speak up for yourself, Wade. I don't do that. That never happened.
He was belting it out. But he was like recording himself too.
I wish somebody voluntarily posted that footage of themselves singing in that control room because it's cool.
To his defense, he has a very nice voice.
It is very.
Wade can really sing.
He can belt it out like no one else.
So
it's not embarrassing.
No.
He's proud. Proud of it. We have a lot of singers in the game former, obviously.
When I was walking around,
right, I'm singing in here.
When I was walking around Bethesda Games,
God, wait, Mojik was also singing in there.
Was Todd Howard singing some Tiny Tim or something?
He was naked.
Oh my God, beautiful.
That is right.
Hammerfell.
I don't know. Look, you guys all talk to yourselves in cars, right?
Yeah.
I do a lot of just like I'm debating something with somebody, in this crazy scenario in my car.
Just out loud.
I guess so, but then I'll say like one line out loud, like "That's not the way it was," and I'm sure someone just.
I've done that, like practice debates and
really getting good in arguments.
We're all very cool.
After the fact, you have an argument, and then you like think about the argument after the fact, and you're like, I totally would have won that argument if I had thought of all these points.
It's like, and then obviously they'll say this, which I already have a counter for.
Right, Kyle. I'm still waiting for the day when you get in an argument. It's going to be really satisfying.
I'm never going to fucking do it. Okay, so stop asking me.
Let's see, Blake. Oh, not Blake. Kyle Ellis says, "Hey, Ben and GI staff, what is the biggest E3 letdown you've ever experienced? A game that you were looking forward to, thought was a sure thing, announcement that never happened?" Yes, Reiner.
Agent. Rockstar North announcement. Sony. They were going to have it on PlayStation 3. It was this big reveal. They showed a logo and then nothing. And then everybody the next year was like, Agent. Nowhere to be found.
And so all they disappeared. All they showed was a logo.
Yeah.
No assets. I don't even remember seeing this.
And it was going to be a jet-setting GTA kind of a game where it was like multiple cities. So everybody's like, oh my God, it's like GTA, but GT World, right?
Yeah.
But it never came to be. And there's some art that leaked online.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a screenshot or two.
Okay.
In the years that followed. But yeah, man, we were excited for that. And that ended up not being anything.
I understand game development is tough, things fall through, but we talked about it in the Wii U episode a lot, but it is just complete BS when companies get out there and pitch this crazy thing that in theory is solely designed to sell systems and then just never comes out. I mean, the Bioshock for Vita is a classic example.
Do you think, this is a bigger topic altogether, but movie studios, as soon as they announce or sign a license or a director, they announce it.
Right.
So no work on the property has begun.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the beginning stages of games fail out more than films, and maybe that's why we don't hear about games until they're like at the marketing phase now? You know what I mean? Like, I used to hear about games earlier, like years in the past we'd have announcements and stuff like that, but now it's like 6-month, 4-month marketing cycles.
Right.
Far Cry Primal, beginning of year, and then it came out 3 months later, 4 months later?
That was pretty wild. And now they announced Far Cry 5 without any more details beyond that. I think stuff falls through to Hollywood much more often. Maybe because there's more films in development?
I feel like I've heard about, the WoW film we heard about for 10 years, and I'm sure that fell through, 3 or 4 times or whatever before it actually was in motion.
Yeah, look how many video game movies get announced versus are actually coming.
If anybody out there listening to the podcast has knowledge of this that has worked at game studios, let Hanson know. I'd like to know a follow-up on this. If you've been in kind of those positions where you have multiple things announced and then you can't announce them because, or in the hopper to announce and you can't announce them because you don't know if they're going to come to fruition or not.
Yeah.
Just to answer the question, I'm still bummed about StarCraft Ghost.
It's really heartbreaking. Speaking of E3 though, that's coming up soon. Someone else wrote in asking if we're going to do like the top 5 roundtable thing for E3 for the podcast. That's not the plan. So I think the plan right now is we're going to be streaming every night of E3, which should be fun. And the idea is those will all be GI shows. So email in if you don't want me to put 4 episodes that week into your feed. They're probably going to be hour and a half roughly each episode. So I don't want to spam your guys' feed, but there's so much to unpack at E3. So it's the time to celebrate games.
We probably will in one of those episodes, though. Probably do that 5 countdown, right? I really like that. I enjoy that format, so.
I do too.
Let's debate about it live.
That's the argument? Is it finally happening?
Oh, it's happening.
I don't think that'd work if we're unpacking everything every day.
We'd have to, and then, of course, we have to do emails every day, which is going to be hard.
Probably no emails, but we'll make up for it the next week.
It'll be fun. I'm excited. I like that schedule of doing a bunch of podcasts. I'm going to try to be honest, maybe you'll love it.
Oh, good. Yeah, should be fun. Let's see. Wes Langdon said, my question is, what do you think it would look like if Apple were to develop a gaming console? That's called the Pippin. Check your history books.
That's right.
It's an ugly,
a very successful Pippin console.
It's fun if you've never heard of it.
The Scotty Pippin.
Yeah.
That's right.
But you think it'd be closed down, ecosystem integration, human interface breaking new ground. the whole thing, I feel like they gave a half-hearted push in this direction with Apple TV. You know, they had Harmonix making the weird sports game on there and stuff, and just no one really cared. And that's probably the end of Apple's big swings into the gaming world for a while.
Yeah. People need to let that go. I don't think they'll ever, like, they're never going to make a console in the way that we want it. I think everyone thinks it's this white whale of, if Apple releases a console, it's over.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, sorry. Chris Craven, speaking of empty promises, from Duluth, Minnesota, he says, whatever happened to Deep Down? One of the reasons I bought my PS4 in the first place was because of the Deep Down trailer looking so effing good. Is it just dead? Did GI ever get to do coverage on it? I don't think anything beyond, like,
that one
maybe
trailer.
an interview or, like, looking at the trailer.
It's very early. Yeah.
There were things swirling around, because I'm in Japan. Like, it seems like it maybe even is still on track for, like, definitely coming out in Japan.
What? No.
Well, maybe not now, but I remember, like, in the months following its announcement, I would like be looking for news to write while writing weekend news for Game Informer.
Okay.
And I would always come across stuff that would be like, oh, hey, here's a news bit about Deep Down. What's going on with that? And it was always Japan-only stuff. Like, this is what's happening for Deep Down, which, by the way, is only releasing in Japan at the moment. And it's like, so I don't know. I don't know where that game is. I don't know what's happening with it. But,
maybe E3, but realistically, I'm sure it's just falling through. Am I nuts? Did Ono from Street Fighter, was he? I think he was
talking in it somehow.
Yeah, I think he was doing interviews for it when it was revealed or something like that. Maybe I'm nuts. Anyways, Tom from Hungary says, do any of you guys have fan art or some sort of memorabilia that you made that you still have today? I'd love to send you some of mine, but I'm too sick to take them out and scan them. I'm sorry to hear that, Tom. Thank you for your time. Good work. Thank you. Fan art or memorabilia from when you were a kid that you guys still have?
That we made ourselves.
I think so.
Yeah, well, the very first Game Informer reader art piece, I drew that way back when.
Oh, really?
It's like Raiden from Mortal Kombat and then some cat character I created, kind of facing off on console. It was. But, I just drew that just because Andy's like, we need something for reader art, and I was like, I'll whip something up.
Is it just in the magazine now? You don't have the actual physical copy anymore?
Yeah, no.
Bummer.
But I do have all of my art when I used to try to be a comic artist. I have like a big pile of all.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. I have so much fan art. Like, I was just looking at this old picture of myself, and there's a big picture hanging on the fridge. And I was squinting and looked at it, and then it turns out it's just, a bunch of Crash Bandicoot art that I drew that was, like, covering our fridge back home. Or every time I go home, I have, like, sketches of, actually, that Metroid Prime stand that's right behind us. I drew that out. Then I also drew, like, this awesome scene from Xenogears where Faye's mom gets murdered in front of him. And then, like, her blood is, like, splattered all over his face. And I painted this huge painting of that for art class, and I still have that hanging in my room. It's a pretty disturbed kid.
I don't have anything. I don't still have anything with me, but I've got like a nerdy story of I used to really like Smash Brothers, but didn't have the money to buy any. Like, I wanted Smash Brothers action figures, and those didn't exist. So what I did is I drew pictures of all of them and then cut them out and played with those as action figures. And there was about a week where I was, developing this like wild story about here's all these basically Smash Brothers fan fiction that I was acting out. And that lasted about a week before one of them broke, and I was like, this is actually really stupid.
How many did you make?
I think I made one for everyone in the original cast. So
Master Hand?
I don't think I made a Master Hand, but
That'd be the easiest one.
Even the bonus
hand is done.
Yeah, but like it was the first Smash Brothers.
I can't believe that they did not have a Donkey Kong or a Pikachu doll out there or Mario. Like,
I'm sure they did. I'm sure at some point they made some sort of action figure or doll or something like that, but I didn't know or didn't have the money to buy it.
Serial, that's the most adorable story I've ever heard.
Did they make amiibos like specifically for you? Like, did you write them a letter?
Which is weird because I don't have that many. Like, I've never been super inspired by it.
He's just drawing.
Also, they have movable joints, so I can't like act out epic stories at some point.
Epic stories. Kyle, you just wrote some Mega Man music?
I wrote Mega Man music, yeah. I forgot about that. I guess that counts, yeah. Sure, Mega Man music. I have a blog on it. You can find it on the website.
I recommend not doing that.
Why don't you insert it right here?
That was great, Kyle. Wow, you're a talented musician. What do you guys like? Email the week.
I still really like the math. at the beginning.
That's just, I mean, that was an effort.
Yeah, they went through a lot of work to do that, and we should reward them for that.
That is true. All right, Eric Garcia from San Diego. We're going to ship you out something real nice. Look forward to that. Thank you for doing just a boatload of math. Also, his email is color-coded. It's a lot of work.
Wow!
Yeah, I love you, Eric. Speaking of a lot of work, coming up after this, we talked to Frank Cifaldi all about the challenges of preserving video game history. Gets a little philosophical, and then it gets grounded again, talking about what he's doing here at Game Informer, and why you should stay tuned and maybe check out his Patreon play. So stay tuned for that. Frank Cifaldi, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Hello.
You should get up on that mic.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, you sound so much better.
Hello.
Welcome, sir.
Hello.
What would your title be these days?
I am the founder and, I don't know what I call myself, I think the executive director of the Video Game History Foundation. We're a nonprofit dedicated to preserving the history of video games by digitizing it and making it available to researchers.
Digitizing it?
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
Taking things that are physical and making them digital. So if it's like a printed thing, scanning it. If it's a game trapped in a shell, like a cartridge or a CD-ROM or whatever, extracting that data, making sure that it's safe. But a lot of what we do is not so much like the games, because the games are fairly safe. Like anything that came out in the store, I'm not worried about. What I'm worried about is the more ephemeral material. So a lot of what we do is collect and digitize things like advertising, or the materials that, for example, the companies might send you guys as a magazine to promote the game. PR stuff, press releases, official artwork, trailers, things like that. Because I've always believed that preserving a video game is more than just taking that code and making it playable. I think it's, I think a video game is more than that. I think it's the history surrounding it. I think it's the way it was talked about, the way it was received, etc. I'm rambling.
No, I love it. I mean, some people might just look at that and say, well, ads that run in a magazine, what's the big deal? But
sure.
Why would that be relevant to the larger story of video games?
Well, if you're telling the story of a particular game, for example, knowing all those aspects about it can just, paint it in a whole new light. I'll give you a really good example.
Please.
I recently, for these guys who were doing a documentary on Earthbound on Super Nintendo game, I tracked down every review of the game, other than Game Informer's, which I didn't have, ironically. But every other review of Earthbound. And by the way, quick tangent, I just read Game Informer's review of Earthbound this morning.
How did we do? What did we give it?
You were fair.
Okay.
Basically everyone hated the graphics back then. That sort of included you guys, but you gave it like an 80 and 85, and I forget. It was Reiner was on there.
Oh wow, okay.
Reiner and Andy, and I forget who the third one was. But anyway, so I dug up all the reviews to sort of contextualize Earthbound for these documentarians, because we're all fairly familiar with the ad campaign for Earthbound. This game stinks, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, the marketing is why Earthbound failed." But I just felt like by digging out all the ways that people were talking about the game, we would be able to contextualize how people saw the game back then and how it was reviewed. And as it turns out, most reviewers of that game found the graphics to be childish, to be bad. Like people thought they were just objectively bad graphics, and the sort of general feeling that was that the game was juvenile. And you can sort of take that in a vacuum, and that makes sense, right? But if you start contextualizing the time that they're talking about this game, then you start to realize, okay, let's look at the E3 where they debuted Earthbound, actually the very first E3 in '95. Sony PlayStation's there, 3D graphics everywhere. The Saturn's there. I think that might have even been when they launched the Saturn. Actually, even if you went to the Nintendo booth, they didn't have the 64 yet, but all their Super Nintendo games were 3D. They were all Super FX games, right? Most of which didn't even ship, like Star Fox 2 and FX Fighter. But this is and like Chrono Trigger had just come out too. So, like, you just think about that context, and it's like, okay, everyone's looking forward. Like, 3D is the future, 2D is dying, and this game's not just 2D. It's like flat throwback 2D, right? It's almost nostalgic for 8-bit within the 16-bit era. And
I don't understand why it didn't sell. Come on, it's right there.
And that's kind of the point. Is like you start building up. You start gathering all this material, and you can contextualize things like that, and you can go, oh, of course, Earthbound didn't sell. Like, how could it have possibly sold in this environment? Like, of course it failed. There's no way you could have marketed this game. And as wonderful as it is, like, no one bought it back then for obvious reasons. And I think that its poor sales at the time, affected the future of that franchise forever. I think you could make a compelling argument. That's why we've never seen 3 in English.
Yeah.
So, the point being that, like, when you're able to gather all of this material and put it down in front of you, you can start telling these narratives about game history that you couldn't possibly tell by just playing the game.
And how long have you been an Earthbound historian then?
Specifically Earthbound?
No, but like what got you on the track of caring a lot about preserving history in the video game industry?
Well, that goes back about 18 years, actually. What really got me going was in my very early days when I got my first computer. This is 1998. It's kind of a latecomer. I'm 34, so I was like 16, 17 or something. I got my first computer, along with it, my first access to the internet, and I hadn't really been playing games for years at that point. I grew up with a Nintendo and a Sega, like everyone did my age, but I kind of grew out of games, I guess, because I mean, a lot of people kind of forget this, but there wasn't really like a gamer culture in the early 90s. It was like we were kids, we all had games, and then we did other stuff. But anyway, so I hadn't been playing games for a long time, but I got this computer, and I started just out of nostalgia more than anything, looking up the games I played as a kid, in the same way I looked up the bands that I listened to and things like that. 'Cause the internet's like, suddenly I have the world's knowledge at my fingertips.
Remember those early days where you're just sitting there thinking like, okay, what can I search for?
Yeah.
What? The entire world's open to me. I'm just going to sit here and rack my brain. It's like playing Scribblenauts or something.
Right, and then you just go down the endless rabbit hole of a web ring on your favorite subject and read all the fan sites and stuff. But anyway, I was looking up old video games, and I discovered emulation. I discovered that it was possible to download old cartridge games and play them on your computer, and this is still fairly new in '98. Like, Nesticle was sort of the big NES emulator at the time.
The classy forefather of emulation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it rhymes with a certain anatomical part that about half of us have, if you don't get the joke.
And I think it's comedy, right? Just to be clear, that is the essence of comedy.
Yes.
Rhyming it with the body part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I thought this was great. I thought this was magic. I still think it's magic to play these cartridge games, on a system they're not made for. And so I started playing the games that I grew up with. I started playing the games that I'd only read about in like Nintendo Power and stuff. Not in Game Informer. I didn't have a subscription.
Cool. Thanks.
I don't know if anyone on the West Coast did in the early '90s.
I have no idea. Be the historians in here.
Yeah. So I started really exploring the catalog. I started looking at the games that came out in Japan, and then I started, just sort of deep diving and getting into it as a teenager does, right, with anything they're interested in. At least I did.
Sure.
Any band I was into, I was like, I must hear all the B-sides to understand it. So I just sort of started getting really interested in, well, where do these images come from that I'm downloading? And I sort of discovered the ROM/emulation scene and started hanging out in IRC chat rooms and stuff. And sorry, they're not chat rooms; they're channels, IRC channels, which are still around. I believe Twitch's chat system is just IRC.
Oh, weird.
Anyway, and I just kind of got into it and started discovering that there were still cartridges that you couldn't download yet, and I just got involved in tracking down the last games that you couldn't download yet for the NES and some other systems, but mostly the NES, and contributing in that way. I ran a ROM site in 2000 or something.
Are you ever worried there's a SWAT team that's going to bust into the door at any second, take you out?
It hasn't happened yet,
Okay.
And here I am shipping video games, so I think I'm okay. The only time I ever got anything was on that ROM site in the year 2000, 17 years ago. I had a bootleg version of Super Mario where you could swim in the air. Like, it's just some random, Taiwanese or something, like, bootleg of Mario. And I got a letter from, like, some group that represented Nintendo asking me to take that specific ROM down. It's like, all right, that's not like Mario. I don't care. It's already out there.
Does it come from a collector culture and vibe within you then to just preserve natural?
Well, I was going to say, at the time, I think maybe it is, right? Like, I think that, because I also, as I was getting into this stuff, I also started to appreciate the physical form of these games too, and started collecting NES games for a while. And I think it kind of started that way, just like I said, that sort of, I've always been the sort of person where if I'm interested in something, I want to deep dive and go all the way. And I think at the time it was just I want all of the ROMs to exist.
Yeah.
But I started, getting a little bit more serious about it, and I started thinking about like, okay, well, which games are actually, in danger of maybe disappearing if someone doesn't act on them, and I, identified that there were games that never actually came out, but still existed, maybe in like one cartridge in someone's garage or something. And I started focusing on unreleased games. I started a website called Lost Levels in 2003. That was, I still think, the first website specifically about unshipped games. And what I started doing there was not just tracking them down, but trying to find the people who made them. And I started to understand that, like, this is history that could be lost. It's not just, collecting games digitally. It's like actually finding history that might disappear if someone doesn't care to find it and tell its story. And so I started doing that, and it really just kind of blossomed from there. I soon entered the actual video game industry, starting in 2004, 2005, something like that. As a journalist, I was at a company called GameTap. We did a games on demand service. It was kind of like, you remember that? I see it.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah. That was cool, actually. That was a cool product. That was Charter Broadcasting, and we had it was basically like Netflix is now, but for video games, and in 2005. So
that's awesome.
Or 2006 or something. It was ahead of its time. I think it'd still be ahead of its time. We charged like $10, and you could play 1,000 games as much as you want. It was crazy. Why didn't you people?
Game time is the future.
But anyway, like, and I worked in the industry, producer of games, journalist, editor. But I've always sort of on the side, nights and weekends, been documenting, preserving, scanning, video game history of all kinds, just because it's just always kind of been my cause.
I mean, I don't know how much you look to other industries, but you always hear so many horror stories about the world of silent film. And I don't know if you know the exact percentage. It's a crazy
I believe
amount.
it's 80% of the films made before 1930 in America are lost forever.
Do you think about that all the time? Do you just wake up, like, Don't Wake Daddy in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going to lose other video games just like those silent films.
Absolutely, yeah. There are games that can be lost, right? And when it comes to unreleased games, I just kind of write them all off, and it's just a nice surprise if we find them. You know what I mean? But there are games that were actually sold to people that I'm sure are still lost. I know that, for example, there's the Game Preservation Society in Japan. It's kind of a Japanese version of what I'm doing, really. One of my inspirations, honestly. And Joseph, who runs that, he's been focusing on games for Japanese computers of the 80s and 90s, of which, like, half of them have not been tracked down.
Oh, wow.
Because, there are various reasons, but I suspect the main one being that there's culturally, people don't share files as much in Japan. It's kind of seen as a cultural taboo to pirate software, I think, and to share things.
So where is it then? It's just sitting in some storage facility somewhere in Tokyo?
The lost games?
Yeah.
That might be gone. They might all be in landfills at this point. I mean, like, Joseph has been collecting for, I want to say like at least a decade now, and he's made, major headway into finding games that don't exist anywhere else. But, you got to remember the early days of computer games. It's like discs sold, in local shops in baggies. Like a lot of these games it's much like film, right? You brought up film earlier, a silent film. The the reason they're lost isn't, the reason they're lost is because no one saw the potential for making money off these films again once they were shown once. There wasn't like television rights. There weren't DVDs or anything. It's the 1920s.
Yeah.
And so companies would make these movies. They'd run them in theaters, and that would be it. There might be a repeat showing next summer or something, but really the only time you make money on a movie in the 20s is when you show it in theaters, and that's it.
Yeah.
So there was no reason to keep these things around. And in fact, there were many reasons not to keep them around, including flammability of nitrate and the cost of storage. So that's why most of these movies are gone. So I bring that up just because you think about computer disc games in the 80s. It's like once you no longer had your PC-88 or whatever in Japan, it's why would you keep the discs? You're not going to keep your old computer around.
This is what I'm trying to wrap my mind around with your work.
Yeah.
Is just what mindset should we be in? Is it always just zooming out as much as possible, think about big perspective? Because it's always the case. It's basically just home movies.
Yeah.
The crap that you would never think is important, I'm going to mess around with this VHS camera. It turns out 20 years from now, that's gold.
Right.
Just filming around, messing around with friends, siblings, like that is exactly what you want. But at the time, you just never think of it.
Right.
And so what is the lesson for today? How can we frame our mind correctly so that we're doing the best job of preserving everything known to man, and then nothing will ever die and we'll all live forever?
I don't have the exact answer you want for that. And in fact, what I often have to admit is that for current video game stuff, I don't really have an answer. And I should, but I've kind of sequestered myself in the old stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what I personally am good at. Like I'm able to recognize what material may have existed in the 80s and 90s and where it might potentially be and what format it was in and how to best archive that stuff.
Do you ever worry that you're too zoomed in because of your own nostalgia?
Well, I think I'm at peace with I myself personally being too zoomed in. Like I think I don't think it's wrong to have a specialty. You know what I mean? Like if I were to expand myself and what I'm personally capable of, I think I'd lose something. But in terms of my company, the Video Game History Foundation, that is a major weakness of ours right now. Is that we're a one-employee company, which is me. We're only a few months old now. I'm going to expand this. This will live beyond me. I will have other people. But right now it's just me, and I am only really specialized in my sort of zoomed-in window. But yes, as a company, we absolutely need to figure this out. It's something, we get asked all the time, like, what should we be doing?
Yeah.
The best practices. I get asked about, delisted digital games all the time, and what do we do to save these? And I don't really have a good answer. I'm not too worried about, for example, delisted console games, right? I'm not too worried about those existing, at least like the last patched version of them, because unless like no one bought the game, like piracy tends to solve those problems.
What about like the mobile realm? We were just talking about it on last week's podcast.
That's where I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Like I don't. There's the volume is just incredible of mobile games. I have not yet seen a piracy group that's really dedicated to like scraping every iOS release that comes out or whatever. And even if you did, it's like, what about the content that's tied to server calls? Like buying in-game items and things like that. And even if you like had a copy of most, if not all, mobile games, it's like, is it the last one, or like, what about all the updates that came to that game? And the example I often use about digital game stuff that I'm concerned about is, I'll just propose a question to you. How do we preserve Farmville?
Right. Like that simple, that question.
Yeah.
Nobody has an answer.
There is no answer.
Yeah.
Farmville you could, in theory, replicate all the game mechanics and the engine and stuff and take it offline and be able to play a facsimile of Farmville, but, like, there's so many questions, like, which version? The first one? The last one? Something in the middle? Like, this is a game that gets updated, I don't know anymore, but at one point daily. They were tweaking numbers sort of on the fly to get as much money as they could out of you because they were evil. But, like, there is no definitive, this is the Farmville.
And I think it's super easy. Totally. And for, like, listeners to be like, well, it's mobile games, they're all garbage, Farmville, who cares? But you have to understand, this is the exact perspective people had in the 80s in Tokyo,
Absolutely, yeah. And the reason I do Farmville specifically is because even if you hate that game, inherently you understand, well, like, all those social games, like that year or two where social games on Facebook was a huge thing, like, that was the definitive social game.
Yeah.
And if we have no solid record of that one, then what about the rest?
Right.
So, like,
historians are going to be looking at crappy cell phone footage, off-screen camera from some 34-year-old. Like, just have no idea what to do. So what, like, do you talk to other companies, to video game companies? What's the level of preservation? Would you ever reach out to a Zynga and ask about this kind of thing?
I mean, yes, I would. We're just too tied up with our current backlog right now, but that is definitely what I want the Video Game History Foundation to be. I want us to figure out the best practices, to work with companies to, if not directly archive their history for them, help them to, because it's not often seen as cost effective. I think that's starting to change now, because I think that we're finally in this ecosystem where it makes sense to keep republishing and porting your games, because system architectures are sort of convening in a way where, like, it's, like, especially if you have a Unity game or something, right? Like, it's not. It's still difficult to maintain that code base, and Unity updates and things break or whatever. But, like, it's easier now than it was to, like, take a Dreamcast build and try to port that to something that just doesn't work. Like, so I think companies are getting better about maintaining archives of the games that they make, because I think they understand there is a commercial potential. Much like the film industry back then, right?
Totally.
Like we're finally understanding that you can continue making money on these games.
Well, look at, like, you're working with Capcom recently. Do you want to talk about that? Like Mega Man Legacy Collection. You also worked on Disney Afternoon.
I did.
Collection as well.
Yeah.
You feel like Capcom gets it financially or philosophically?
Yeah. And just a quick caveat, that is sort of my side gig. That's not the Video Game History Foundation.
Oh, okay.
That is my work at Digital Eclipse, which is what I was doing before I founded this, and I'm still working with them contractually.
Okay.
Everything I do is about saving history, and it's commercial.
Yeah, I mean, there's beautiful scans and stuff in those games. We
Thank
talked
you.
about it recently on the podcast. Yeah, great DuckTales art.
Oh yeah, I tracked that down to an art collector who had those. That's the kind of person you need on these projects to like find that stuff.
Not to hack Tim Turry. He doesn't know what the hell to do. Former co-host of the show, kids were really.
No, Tim's great. But I mean, Capcom just doesn't have some of this stuff. Like they had some of it, but like I had to go like be an archivist and go find this stuff. But what was the question about?
I just, with companies, it's just this.
Oh, sure.
They're so focused on moving forward. They're all working their asses off to get the next release out. But all the times when I visit studios, a company like Naughty Dog is like, oh yeah, I think we have a closet somewhere around here where we have some of the original design work from Jason and Mandy's early days at the studio, or even, like, I remember going to Crystal Dynamics for the Tomb Raider story. They're like, yeah, we have the raw recording of Gex's VO from Dana Gould. I know I saw that recently. I don't really remember where.
Right.
And then, of course, when we're only at the studio for like a day and a half, it's just impossible to be like, okay, forget about Rise of the Tomb Raider. Let's go focus on those Gex tapes. Like, they don't give a shit. They're not going to go out of their way to help you.
Yeah.
Is that a constant frustration, just people not focusing enough on the history? Enough history nerds out there?
Well, the positive side of the kind of work that I did with Capcom is that it was a commercial product, so they were inspired to go digging. And actually, Capcom Japan was able to dig out some really cool stuff. Like, I don't know if you went through that museum too much in Disney Afternoon, but we had things like storyboards from the shows.
Yeah.
And that was all material that was sent to Capcom Japan back then for reference that they still had in file folders. And they like scanned them all for us, which was really cool. So that was great, and the question, like, do companies like care? I think they all, in theory, care, but company's a company, and time is money, and if you can't make sense of making some of your old material into a profitable product, I think it's very difficult to expend any energy into it. That said, the kind of work we do at Digital Eclipse, what we're trying to prove out is that it actually doesn't cost that much to get these older games running, especially with our tech, because our tech is very specifically designed to be extremely portable. The whole sell to companies like Capcom and our other partners is that once we've gotten the games working on our tech, it's not going to be that hard to get it working on PlayStation 5 or whatever. Just call us and we'll probably have a prototype running in like a week.
How often are companies just using going back to those old pirated ROMs as the best way to source these old games? Is that a pretty common thing?
Well, the only announced projects we've had have been with Capcom, and at least with Capcom, they had a ROM archive.
Oh, cool.
That they were able to send to us digitally. I don't imagine that those were downloaded off the internet, but I don't know.
Sure.
You might be referring to something that I've been quoted about with Nintendo.
Oh, I don't know this.
Oh, you don't know? Okay.
No.
I gave a talk at GDC last year about Digital Eclipse and sort of some of the work we did on Legacy Collection, and the crux of my argument was that we don't embrace software emulation as a tool in the commercial video game industry because instead of embracing it early on, we demonized it. And the argument I was kind of making is that Nintendo and Sony sort of led the argument in the late 90s that emulation is a threat as opposed to a tool, and that we still demonize and think of emulation as being sort of like a bootleg knockoff way of playing a game, as opposed to being what it is, which is the most efficient and safe tool for getting an older game to run on modern technology. Like, there is no, like, you give me the source code for these old Nintendo games, and like we spend time porting them, it's going to cost like 6 times as much, and there's going to be new bugs. Like, we're going to break something. Like, you look at some NES games that are on mobile or whatever, and you'll find where they made a traditional porting attempt as opposed to an emulation like attempt like we did, and it'll be like, why is he jump funny? Like, why is the boss behaving differently? And it's like, emulation is the best way to get these games out. And Nintendo, I think, led that sort of PR campaign against emulation. You'll still find language on Nintendo.com, their legal section, about how emulation is the biggest threat to the video game industry, and from the 90s.
Not to defend corporations, but surely they've lost a lot of money to it over the years. It's great from a historical perspective, but financially they're a business, right? They have to watch it.
But they've also benefited from it, and I think substantial. Excuse me.
Oh no! Nintendo got one with the rice, and I'm sorry, everybody. Frank's
Virtual console games on the Wii, that's emulation. Like Virtual Console is emulation, which is fine. But they benefited from emulation while still calling it a major threat. And yes, companies theoretically may have lost money because, but it's like, it's blaming the tool as opposed to the behavior, right? It's like, emulation is a technology. It would be like, I don't know, blaming like Windows for piracy. It's just a way of running code.
Sure.
But I think when you say that, you're confusing emulation, the technology, with emulation-based software piracy. Those are two different things. One is a tool, and one is a behavior. And I think that the video game industry has benefited greatly from the tool, and that consumers don't understand the tool because of the demonization of emulation.
ROMs don't kill people.
No.
Okay. Got it. Hey, just to zoom out for a second here. You hear so many stories, if you're a history nerd, about just people attempting throughout history too early to preserve stuff. People trying to restore a painting from the 1300s in the 1800s and just blowing it because they don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
Is there any world or any aspect of your world now where you think about that? Like, are we preserving this stuff too soon? And when it comes to just code, I guess it can never be too soon. But do you ever zoom out that big and just think about, what flaws is this strategy going to have in 40 years?
Yeah, I think about that a lot with what happens a lot on the internet has a tremendous backlog problem, right? Like most of our history is still not on the internet because it's contained in mediums that aren't digital friendly, like paper. And what I kind of think about a lot is that there have been, for example, video game magazines. Old video game magazines have been scanned and are on the internet. But to what you were saying about maybe doing it too early and not in a way that the future will look kindly on, a lot of things that we scanned and put on the internet, are sort of low DPI and JPEG compressed, and they're not high enough resolution to, for example, like make a 1-to-1 copy of that magazine, right? And that's sort of an easy example. Another one would be something that we focus on a lot in the foundation are the digital materials that a company would send to the press. I talked about this earlier at the beginning of the show. And for example, I'll have a CD that was sent. A really good example was one that I have for. A really good one is I have an optical disc that has screenshots of Ocarina of Time like a year before it came out or something, right? Like really early screenshots.
Yeah.
Direct feed from Nintendo. And those screenshots exist on the internet, but at like half the size, because it's like the 90s, and bandwidth is an issue.
Yeah.
And JPEG compression isn't very good yet.
And we talked about it earlier, off camera, about having the huge GameSpot logo over 1/4 of the JPEG.
Yeah. So while some of this material exists and is accessible, it's damaged.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's an example where, that stuff is digitized, but not in a future-proof way. And it requires someone like me digging up a magneto-optical disc, which is a format I wasn't even familiar with before I started doing this kind of work. And then I luckily just have a volunteer locally near me who just really likes recovering data off of discs. So
that is a lovable, specific kind of nerd that you need for this.
So into it, yeah. And it's not like even specifically video games. He just likes recovering data off of discs. He loves floppy things and anything sort of magnetic media. He's totally into. So I was able to go to his house and recover these images off of this disc that I basically stole from the trash when I worked at 1UP back in the day. That was sent to EGM back in '97. And it takes someone like me digging through the trash and then recovering off of obscure formats to recover these lossless direct feed images. And anyway, it's a very long way of saying that I think in particular anything that involves sort of encoding, is never future thinking, I think. Right?
Interesting. Okay.
Like you work in video.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if you shoot at 4K and downscale to 1080p or whatever, but you know what I mean? You can see that happening.
All the time, sure.
Yeah. Right? And encoding to a lossy format that, when we're all on 4K TVs in a couple of years, where's that original footage? Can we get a clean version of that now, or did we just encode it to our target at that time? Yeah, so that's the sort of archiving that could be like too early to your point. And what we try to do, Video Game History Foundation, we have this notion of building a digital library of this material that we're archiving, and what we try to do is always have a close to the source as we can version of a file. So like if I'm scanning something, it's like, all right, here's the 800 ppi tip off the scanner. I'm never going to touch that again. But then we also have the version that's actually like published and viewable.
Yeah.
Which would be like, okay, I've taken that, I've descreened it, I've color corrected it, I've crunched it down to 300 dpi, which is still huge, but manageable.
Yeah.
So like, our way of dealing with that is try to always keep the lossless stuff somewhere, but then have the target modern version. And so 20 years from now, if someone needs that ad and or the flyer that we scanned that was from an archive that only one exists anymore, and that archive burned in a fire or something, and the only, what I mean, the only remaining version of that flyer is the scan we made. I can go retrieve the lossless one and republish it in its native 800 ppi or whatever.
You're so lucky you're working with images, because with video it drives me nuts, because there's been so many cover story trips where it's just all the footage, all right, just got to delete it. We just do not have.
There's no room.
Yeah, and it just kills me. It's there's so many good little Todd Howard moments. I still have the raw footage from Todd Howard giving a tour of Skyrim's development and stuff. I was well, I can't ever get rid of that. Or even just, I was going back through E3 stuff, and it's I have E3 footage of Jason Jones showing off Destiny for the first time at E3. Right. It's I just have to hang on to that forever, I guess. We just don't know what's going to be magical until it's too late.
Yeah, and that's, if anything, that's what scares me most, is just how completely digital we are now, and how, that sounds ideal, right? But it's not, because, back in the day, you're never going to get higher quality than your master, film, right? And the film can be stored, and it doesn't cost anything except the space that it inhabits, right? But digital HD video, lossless, worth gigs, right?
Yeah.
It's huge, and there's no taking that tape and putting it somewhere. I mean, you could start storing on tape backups, but it's so costly.
Even a hard drive, it's it's gonna fail in a second.
Yeah. And so, that stuff scares me. And it's not just you. It's almost all of this raw video material that's being taken. I read an article recently about how storage of video in the film industry is becoming a real problem, and how for even some really huge, big budget, popular movies, they're doing what you're doing, which is we have all this raw footage of the shooting, and because it's digital now, as opposed to back in the old days, they'll just keep the camera going.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They'll just keep filming all day because they might accidentally catch something cool.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
But back in the day, of course, they'd have to conserve film because film's really expensive, so they have to, do the next take and roll camera, right? But now they just keep filming, and they just have to cull. When it comes time to archive the movie, it's we have a petabyte of footage that costs money to store, that we're storing in a format that will be obsolete in 4 years.
And their mindset's well, we made a couple crappy dev diaries, made some Yahoo trailers behind the scenes. That's enough. Let's move on. And it's oh nope, now it's just forever stamped in this terrible format.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you've probably gotten Blu-rays that have bonus features from the DVD. Right. So they're still in standard def.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time, and that's just going to continue happening, because I think what they've mastered, these sort of I'm not too worried about. Well, for some movies, we're going to lose the master of the movie, period. But for a lot of them, I'm not too worried about those. But the special features and behind the scenes stuff, I think all we're going to have of that material for movies of the last 20 years is whatever they mastered into bonus material.
Yeah.
I fear for many movies for being able to go back and make new extra materials. Now that it's 20 years later and we know what kinds of things people care about with this movie, so we can dig that stuff up instead of the things that marketing wanted us to show.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Like, Jurassic Park's my favorite movie of all time. I'm very dorky with it. It's like, I've seen every making of Jurassic Park. You understand the beats. Like, okay, I understand, like, there's just some skeletons.
Yeah.
James Earl Jones going to walk to this museum or whatever. But then I just found this video on YouTube. I don't know who put it up, where it's from, but it's just like 15 minutes of just raw on-set footage of Spielberg directing them, like when they're coming out of the visitor center and getting into the cars for the first time. This is the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's never going to be put on a DVD.
No.
I don't know where it's going to be stored other than now on YouTube at 240p.
Right. Yeah, and if you don't grab that, then it might actually disappear from YouTube, and you'll never know where it came from, where the source was. And yeah, so that's something that we all experience in game development too. I mean, like, once a game is done and you've maybe archived the source code, it's like art assets that go into a game often start off much larger and then are crunched down to fit on the disc.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, we don't, I guess we still ship discs sometimes. We don't, but you know what I mean? Like, that original art gets crunched down, and then when we archive the source code into a giant-ass zip, it's probably going to be that crunched down art and not source art. That source art, it's not like we intentionally go, throw it away. It's just data kind of degrades, and I don't mean like it literally degrades. I mean like I get a new computer and forget to back that up, or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just.
So what's the takeaway here? Because I've heard the theory of, hey, everybody, steal stuff from work.
Yeah,
that's going to be important if you're in the video game industry.
That's my pal Jason Scott. Steal from work.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's his mantra.
Yeah. I think the takeaway is that history is going to get lost, and you have to live with it. That's just the ephemeral nature of things. Like of life, and
you just have like a thimble that you're dipping into the waterfall here, is to try and save whatever you can.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And the struggle of the archivist is saving as much as we can, because we can never predict what people will care about in the future, but also identifying the things that we know people are going to care about, you know what I mean, and saving that while we still can. And I mean, that's kind of an internal struggle for me. I'm here. We haven't even talked about why I'm here, but
I wanted to get it, because it seems like the complete opposite of steal stuff from work.
Yeah.
Very few things have been stolen from Game Informer, and there is a large stockpile. And so, why are you here?
Well, okay, Game Informer is in the world of video game magazines, all two of them. Game Informer is such a unique situation in that Andy and Reiner have been here forever, right?
They don't go home at night either,
right?
Yeah, just wander the halls.
But I mean, it's like Andy's been here since the magazine started in '91. Really, he was at Funko in the late '80s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, goes that far back. He's always been here, and he's always understood this stuff's important, and he's always just kept it somewhere. Like, you've always had a procedure for like builds of games or for art discs, which is like, it goes here when you're done and it gets filed away.
Yeah.
Right? And it's such a unique situation. Like, there is no other video game magazine that I can think of that had an editor for 10 years, let alone like 26 or whatever.
26 that's always in the same mindset of just, who knows if it comes from this collector's part within him. I know he's a completionist at heart.
Right.
But he's just had that his entire life. And it just is this perfect blend in this one place in Minnesota. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you haven't had to move very often.
Just once, yeah.
Yeah. And you're in Minneapolis, where real estate is, at least compared to where I am in California, very cheap. So you can afford to have 3 closets full of stuff, you just keep piling things in.
That'd normally be a bedroom for 6, you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Like the room that's nothing but Rock Band and Guitar Hero drum sets, like, you can have that here.
Come to Minnesota, everybody.
You really need to clean that room. No, I'm not exaggerating, right? There's a room that's just drum sets.
Yeah. You can walk like lily pads across this entire room and just drum sets.
But because of that situation, almost everything that was ever here is still here. right?
Yeah.
Some things are gone. Like I talked to Andy about how when the magazine was all analog and had to be shot on film, like that film's gone, and that was a space issue, and that's unfortunate because that was actually like very significant space. But almost any like review build that came in, any like PR art disc that came in, your production files starting in the like mid 90s, like all of those are all still in house because you've had the same leadership forever, and you don't have a culture where it even makes sense to take stuff home because I think you just company culture wise, you all understand that this stuff gets filed away. This is our heritage. It stays here.
Yeah.
And so it's like I've been here for this is my 8th day in office, just trying to make sense of the archive, and it's just endless. There's just there's like 35 millimeter photos from CES in like 94 that I found. There's like I was going through your file cabinets, which had to be drilled open and had been sealed since the 90s. Like,
therefore, you imagine something's great in there, and then we open it up. It's a bunch of Tiger handheld
it's
art.
It's every press release that was sent when those were actually mailed on paper. And it's actually what I was expecting.
Oh, good. Okay.
I mean, there's great information in these press releases that you don't get anywhere else. And what I like about them as someone who occasionally can be called an historian who writes historical articles, that tracks down data and information, it's like these press releases, people might have covered that news story back then, but I now have the primary source,
right,
as opposed to the secondary, as opposed to the report of that story. I now have that story that was sent by the publisher, and so, when magazines like make mistakes or assumptions about the news or don't quite report it right, it's like I now have the primary source of that information. That's gold if you're writing a story.
And so what you're doing here is Andy's interested in preservation, you're interested in preservation, and so my sense of it, I've been filming you along the way. I don't know if you've noticed how I've interrupted you with the camera.
Oh, that was you.
Yeah, that was me behind that camera. So we're filming this because I think it's a fascinating process, but you're just trying to get a lay of the land, right?
Yeah, I mean, this trip, I booked 8 in-office days. And by the way, like, I should just say how thankful I am that I'm in this position where, I have this 501c3 nonprofit that is fundraising, and that, I've been able to, with my patrons, fundraise enough to just travel to Minneapolis and scope out Game Informer for almost 2 weeks, just to figure out how to help you guys with your problem. And I mean, that's why I started a nonprofit, is because, I was doing this kind of work just as Frank Cifaldi forever, but now that I'm the Video Game History Foundation, we can just sort of, like, take on these bigger projects. But yes, like, my goal this trip is to get the lay of the land, to figure out the extent of your problem.
Keep saying problem, Frank. I think we're all insulted.
Well, the problem is that this data is locked away on temporary material that will die. Like, a Sega CD preview build on a CDR from 1993. CDRs have an expected shelf life of like 20 years or something like that. Like, there are probably dead games in there. Like, that is a problem. That's what I mean when I say problem.
Gotcha.
Or like I'm dealing with EPROMs right now. Some of those are probably dead. Let's hope for the best. But yeah, that's what I mean when I say you have problems. So I'm here. This trip, I spent 6 straight days or something like that, just taking things out of unwieldy boxes and putting them in good boxes. And I mean, you'll probably publish photos when I'm done, but like that storage closet, it's just stacked with like the banker's boxes now.
Yeah.
That I've sort of labeled so that I can go, okay, we have, 12 boxes of unsorted CD-shaped things. Because that's the extent of the filing I can do in the time I'm here. It's just like stuff in the boxes. And I can start, my homework can sort of be estimating, what that work would entail to archive everything, which, by the way, I literally think is impossible. Like, I just...
Oh, really?
We're talking like 10,000 plus discs, like, I
saying you're lazy, Frank?
It's possible eventually, but the workload is such that, like, you know, I think you have to start thinking about other solutions, like you know, physically organizing and putting the discs into safer storage than the banker's boxes that I crammed them in. You know, but yeah, I mean, my homework is to sort of assess what the workload is and I think make recommendations and ultimately have a return trip, if not several, if not move to Minneapolis. I don't know.
That sounds good. Yeah, you're welcome to just camp out. We actually have a beautiful rock band room.
Oh yeah, the drums.
Yeah, you really should check it out for a living
kind
situation.
Of like squeeze in between the drum legs.
That's so beautiful. Get out of here, Aerosmith guitar. Trying to sleep. So yeah, just trying to get lay of the land.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do with all this
so
stuff.
much.
Yeah,
so much.
and of course the classic temptation is just, oh, what gems do we have? What unreleased stuff is in there?
Right. Like anytime anyone comes to visit me, which by the way isn't often enough.
Oh really? We're not trying to disturb you. I understand you have lots to do down there, Frank.
Like every time someone comes and visits, like, have you found anything?
Yeah, totally.
I would love to like dig through and find things, but I'm still just like I can't even look at the discs. Or it's like when you were a kid and you'd have to clean your room and you'd find a cool toy and you'd stop and play with it. Like you just can't.
Yeah,
it'll never get done. So you know, like I have now filled all these boxes. I'm kind of done with that, and I've got 3 days left. And what I'm choosing to focus on before I leave are the ROMs, as in the physical chips with pins on them.
There's a lot of unlabeled stuff.
Yeah. And what I'm focused on is well, first of all, identifying what they are. Second, storing them and labeling them in a safe way. Like I've got anti-static bags coming in. And somewhere in there, like cleaning them because they you know, not that it's like anyone's fault, but they were not stored in an archival way. They were, when, you know, companies would send these ROMs, you pop them on the boards for your Sega Genesis or whatever, you play the game, and then you take the ROMs off and store them. And the way they were stored was they were crammed together and taped. And so now all of the pins have tape residue, making them very difficult to extract data from, because to extract data from an EEPROM, you are connecting to the pins.
Right.
You're making metal connections to the pins and reading off of them.
Look, Frank, no one's perfect. I don't know what to tell you. We thought it was a good idea, apparently.
No, and it's better than literally any other publication did.
All right, we'll take that. Sure.
I mean, like, you actually kept this stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, part of what I'm doing, you probably saw, I have rubbing alcohol in a cup and a toothbrush, and I'm just like kind of getting some of the gum off that I can, and then I got to kind of like fingernail it or have a paper towel. But cleaning them up, bending back all the pins that got bent over the years. You saw the terrible shape of Booger Man that I showed you. Poor Booger Man.
I don't know if he's gonna make it. That heart rate monitor is not looking great for Booger Man.
But what I want to do with the rest of my time here is try to extract the data off of those EEPROMs, because of all the temporary media here, that's the one that I'm most concerned with.
Okay.
Static electricity could kill those games. UV light could kill them.
Yeah, and so that, I don't know, my sweet spot is just finding those early preview builds, or obviously unreleased games, or we're not getting into specifics yet, but we just imagine, it feels like a certain investigation where there's a lot of smoke but no fire yet, where it's like, it seems like it's ripe. It's like, there should be life on this planet, the ingredients are ripe, but we just haven't gotten that microscope out to look yet.
It is statistically likely that we will eventually find something that no one's ever seen before. Like, we have to. And we've already dug out unreleased games that I happen to see when taking big piles and putting them in boxes and go, oh, that one, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, we've dug out a few already. Like, we have a Game Gear game that no one's seen that doesn't boot.
Yeah, just think of that. How tempting for everybody out there.
So
we will definitely, we hope to do stuff with that. Like, I'm definitely filming the entire process because I really care about this.
Well,
topic.
and then that Game Gear game, it's like, you know, I got to talk to Andy, and, you know, that might be me taking that with me and desoldering the ROM.
There's a ton of details until we can eventually, you know, pull this curtain back, but I'm really excited to keep working with it and have the big reveal at some point.
I mean, I'll definitely be back. I hope so. I have to, because there's just, I mean, I barely scratched the surface of digging through file cabinets full of paper, and like that's my jam. Is paperwork.
So if people want to follow you, people or care about this topic, do you have a link for the Patreon, or what should they Google here?
Yeah, so our website is gamehistory.org. If you are able to donate some money so that we can do things like this Game Informer trip, we'll probably be doing a separate fundraiser for a return trip. But if you're able to, and if you want to join our Patreon community and sort of get in on our Discord and stuff, our donate page is gamehistory.org/donate. That'll allow you to donate through Patreon or PayPal or credit card. So far all of your money has just gone to our expenses for doing this kind of work. Eventually I'll pay myself, but I haven't really been able to yet because I took a trip to Minneapolis.
Sorry, not that affordable after all. Well, hey, Frank, you're doing the Lord's work. Thank you for standing up for video game history when very few other people are interested in that. So thank you for being passionate about it.
I'm going to correct you quickly, which is that I think a lot of people care about it. It's just a very difficult thing to approach.
To devote your life to.
To devote your life to, for sure. And I mean, I come across people all the time who are just like, how can I help? How can I help?
Yeah.
And I will figure that out and get back to all of you.
Perfect. All right, thanks a lot for your time, man.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next Thursday when we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.